Fine.
Okay, great. Actually, I just started recording. Do you want to do just a little intro to our actual meeting?
Sure. Where is everyone else? Are we in the right place? I will. Good morning, everyone. I think folks are just starting to roll in to our sort of soft start here at 9:30 this morning for day two of Youth Development Oregon annual retreat, the planning and learning retreat. I think is maybe the full title, couldn't fit on the slide. For the record, since we're recording, my name is Cord Bucher, but I don't think we've formally started the meeting because only Parasa can do that. Um, but we thank everyone for making time today. And Melissa is going to be sending everyone off to, we've decided just for the um, relational portion of the morning before we start um, getting into the main body of work, we'll just go out to some breakout rooms. There's not really any guiding topics. It can be very casual. It can also be if you want to reflect on day one, or if you were not able to be here yesterday and want to hear from other folks their impressions, that's a great thing to talk about. I think we'll get brought back here about 10 till 10, and I think Brian will probably do an agenda review, and we'll get things ready to go for our presentation from Caroline Cruz.
All right, I'm going to open the rooms. Maybe everyone will just get pulled into a room.
You're just going to send us, right? I don't have to look for the room.
Yes.
Okay.
Except no one is
Oh,
getting.
everyone is here. I couldn't see anybody, but now I see everyone's
Oh,
popping up.
shoot.
It was just so quiet. All right. I had to reset my view here. Hey, Brian, you're here.
Morning.
Melissa made me do an intro. Do you want to do a real intro?
Good morning, everybody. Yes, Brian Detman, Wadio Director. For the record, thanks for being here. I know, yeah, I thought we had a really productive time yesterday.
Oh, maybe people are getting pulled into rooms now. Sorry. Day two is Caroline. Downloads. All right. And we're recording.
We're recording. All right. Well, what, we have like 7 minutes till we get started. Good morning. Just saying hello. I see Caroline Cruz is already here. Good morning, Caroline. Thanks so much for doing a presentation for us this morning. Maybe, oh, where do I see? Oh, there's Cord. Um, in terms of facilitation, Cord, do you want to do like, I don't know, like kind of the quick introductions of the different speakers today, or kind of what's coming? Does that sound fair? Can't hear you.
I guess I got muted coming out of the room. Like the overall agenda review for today.
Well, sure. Why don't, yeah, like yeah, kind of. And as we transition, like the transitions is what basically mean.
Got it. Well, I think I'll actually where is Anya? I can't see her, but I think it'd be nice for Anya to actually do the introduction for Caroline, as I think you may know each other better, and that might be nice. But I will do a quick overview of today's agenda and then turn it over. So hope everyone had fun conversation in your breakout room. We are going to be hearing today from three different guest speakers, in addition to having another round of breakout conversations similar to what we did yesterday. So, coming up next, we're going to hear from Caroline Cruz from Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, presenting about traditional tribal practices with youth. I'm very excited. I haven't, I think maybe some folks, Anya may have maybe familiar with the material, the presentation, or has heard from Caroline before, but I don't believe I had. So I'm really excited about this one and looking forward to it. Um, Following that, we're gonna have a short break, and then we'll be doing the breakout conversations rounds similar to what we did yesterday. So for the folks who weren't here yesterday, we have three different topics that are going to be facilitated by staff. We'll kind of start that section with a really brief overview of what those topics are, and then you get to see all three or participate in all three conversations. Take about 20 minutes for each. So you'll be, roughly 15 minutes in conversation. Because we're online, we don't really need 5 minutes of transition time. So maybe we get to go a little bit longer in the group conversation, and then we'll pull everyone out and then move you to a new room. Um, and so we do these three rounds of breakout conversations, and then we'll have a longer break to give folks time midday, 12:30 to 1 roughly, to if you want to get lunch or just need a little bit of time. We have a 30-minute break. And then this afternoon, we're going to have two more presentations from guests. So first, we'll hear from Wes Rivers from the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission to talk about the ADPC, what they do there, what their mission is, and to talk about how their work aligns with YDOs. We actually are in the ADPC statutes and have a role to play in supporting their work in addressing substance use through prevention and recovery programming. And so I think it'll be a really interesting conversation about like how our work aligns and what kinds of opportunities there are for us to work more closely together. We'll have another break, and then we'll hear from Anna Williams from the System of Care Advisory Council, or SOCAC. And again, another overview of what they do, what their responsibilities are, and some conversation about how our work may align. ADPC and SOCAC also work together, and so both Wes and Anna are going to be in both conversations, and there might be even some cross-pollination in terms of how all three of our agencies might find opportunities to work together or align what we do. And then after that, we'll wrap up with conversation about just takeaways from both today and yesterday, and identifying any next steps, anything that we want to really prioritize in our work together. So I think another full day. I think yesterday I really enjoyed the conversations, and I think it was very rich. And um, Brian, should I pass it over to Anya to introduce our next
I
speaker,
thought we
or do you
might.
want
We've
to? Oh,
got
go
like
ahead.
2 minutes,
Okay.
maybe just to do like kind of quick. And I'm not gonna do, there's not gonna be an icebreaker or whatever. Just like name and role because we've got a couple minutes. We've got a few new faces that can kind of let Caroline know who's in the room, in the Zoom
Mhm.
room. And again, I see some new faces. So let's just quickly go around, and we'll keep it moving. Yeah, like your name, your role, perhaps if since there's some YDC members and YDO staff, you could say a word if you're a YDC member, kind of where your specific work is. With regard to the YDO. So Brian Detman, Youth Development Oregon, director of the agency. Just appreciate everybody being here this morning. You're gonna also have to choose somebody to pass it to, but we'll help you make sure you don't, get messed up. I'm gonna turn over to Molly Rogers. Good to see you, Molly.
Good morning. I shared with everybody, I'm sorry I missed yesterday, Youth Development Council member, and Caroline Cruz was one of the very first people I ever met 30 years ago in Wallowa County. So I'm super excited to see her today.
Molly, this is Melissa interrupting, so sorry. Let's give a wave when we're speaking. I know we are outlined in green, but it's even hard for me to see who's speaking on the screen. Can you pass it to Jeff Parker for a minute? I just saw his note in chat about how he's gonna have to hop out, but let's give him a quick chance to introduce himself.
Thanks, Molly. I'm waving. Yeah. Hey, good morning. Good morning, Caroline and everyone else. My colleagues here. Jeff Parker. I'm the CEO of Northwest Youth Corps, based here in Eugene, Oregon, but we work statewide. In fact, we work across 3 states: Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. I'm really happy to be here. Really apologetic that I have to miss about the first 15 minutes of the presentation, but I will jump back in as soon as I can. And I would love to pass it to my colleague, Daniela.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning. Daniela Avila. I am a Youth Development Council member, and in my professional life, I am the Systems Improvement and Youth Development Lead for Douglas County ESD. Let's see. I'm going to pass it over to Lawrence this morning.
Thank you, Lawrence White, YDO staff member, Racial and Ethnic Disparity Coordinator. And I'll pass it to Chief Copeland.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I am waving. Not sure why my video is not working this morning. It was loading of some kind, but I work for the Kaiser Police Department, part of the YDC, and I'm as you guys know, fairly new in the process, but super happy to be here. And yesterday was great, so it was awesome. Oh, and I have to pass to somebody. I don't know who's next on the list. Jenny Glass, I see your name on there.
Good morning. Hi, Jenny Glass, on the YDC, and I work for the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco. And I will pass it to Sam.
Morning, everybody. Sam Coe. I work for Oregon Department of Education. And I will pass it on to Molly. She just talking to me next to me. Oh no, she already went. Parasa's next to Molly.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Parsa Chanrami. It's nice to meet you, Caroline. I serve as the chair of the Youth Development Council, and in my other job, I work as the Senior Policy and Advocacy Director for the Coalition of Oregon School Administrators. With that, I'm going to pass it to Janelle.
Hello, I'm Janelle Theobald. I'm a Youth Development Council member, and yeah, I'm currently a college student, freshman. I'm in my dorm. Don't look around too much. But yeah, I'll pass it to. Has Melissa already gone?
Not really. I interrupted briefly, but thanks, Janelle. It's good to see everyone. Melissa Gallardo. I am executive support staff for YDO, and it's great to see everyone. I did not wave, sorry. I will pass it to Molly Burns.
Good morning, Molly Burns, YDO staff. I'm a grant manager, and Sally Deck.
Good morning. I'm Sally Deck. I am a YDO staff member, also a grant manager, and I will pass it to Kim.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Lay. I am a member of the Youth Development Council, and my day job here at Portland City Hall is I'm the Deputy Ombudsman, and also an immigration attorney. I will pass it to Tanasia.
Thanks, Kim. Good morning. I am Tanisha Bishop. I am the Youth Grant Administrative Specialist with YDD, and I will pass it to Nate.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Nate Latanzio, and I'm a Youth Advisory Council Coordinator at Youth Era and a council member on the YDC. Don't think, Paul, have you gone yet? I'll pass it to you if not.
Thanks, Nate. Caroline, I'm so excited. I have to actually have you do some training. We've met a bunch of times, but so excited that Paul Sell, Associate Director at YDO. And I'm trying to think, Anya, have you gone?
I have not. Good morning, everyone. So good to see you and all, and so good to see you, Caroline. And Caroline, I don't need to introduce myself to you because you know more about me than I'm trying to forget. And I cannot wait to hear your presentation and introduce you, hopefully properly. And I will pass it on to Savannah.
Hello. Hello. I think I might be lagging. My name's Savannah. I am super excited to be here. I have been on the council for about a year. And yeah, I'm a teacher, so I work with Native youth mostly, and that's kind of like where my passion is. And I will pass it to Joy. Joy, have you gone?
No, thanks, Savannah. Good morning, everyone. I am Joy Snyder. I am the Prevention and Justice Admin Specialist with YDO, and I will pass it to Abe.
Good morning, everybody. Abraham Magana with YDO, Grant Manager and Operations Analyst. With that, I'm going to pass it to Lindsay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Lindsay Schoonover. I work with YDD and I'm the compliance monitor for the state of Oregon. I will pass it to Jared.
Good morning, everyone. Jared Shaw, Grant Manager at YDO. And I will pass it to Zan.
Good morning, everyone. Zan Ojiro, former Benton County Commissioner, and in my final year of membership on the Youth Development Council. And because I arrived late, I'm unsure who to pass it to next.
Have we heard from, thank you, Zan. Have we heard from Nate?
Yes.
We did. Thank you. I think that's everyone, but if we haven't heard from you, pipe up, please.
I think Janella's here, right?
Yeah, Janella's here.
Did Cord go?
I already went.
Cord, did you go? We can't. Oh, you're muted again.
Yeah, sorry about that. Hi, I'm Cord Bucher. I'm Deputy Director, YDD staff. And did we hear from Sam? Okay, good. Then I think we've maybe gotten everyone. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sure. Well, good morning again. It is my distinct pleasure and privilege to introduce my dearest friend and mentor, and I don't know what role you don't play for me, Caroline Cruz, who adopted me into the tribal world 21 years ago. And I'm so happy that this adoption happened. And Caroline, I don't know what to tell you about Caroline. Her volume of work is tremendous. The level of respect that she has in Oregon tribal communities across United States and in Canada. And I don't know, you have you gone to Australia too? Okay. But if she goes to Australia, when she goes, she will carry the same load of wealth of information and love for people and there as well. So I met Caroline 21 years ago and she adopted me, and I had the privilege of serving as a tribal liaison that, and that's the most, I think, important role that I still carry, somewhat down my job description, but it's an honorable one. So, but as long as I've known Caroline, she's been threatening to retire. So every time she announces that she's retiring, I take it as fake news. So this last time she retired about a year ago from being if I mess up your title, please correct me. as the General Manager of Health and Human Services for Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. And we had a retirement party, but I told her then, I don't believe you. And I was right, because now Caroline's still working for Warm Springs, but in a different role as a tribal. What's your role? Seriously. It's like you
I'm the tribal liaison.
to the state, right?
No, to still with the tribe.
Mm-hmm. But
Still,
liaison to the state
yeah,
agencies or other tribes or everybody?
no, just for Warren Springs.
Okay.
That's
Well,
enough.
sorry.
Warren Springs is enough, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so with Caroline, so I was privileged also to be witnessing the first steps that Oregon took in the development of tribal, not the development of tribal best practices, but development of recognition as tribal best practices as evidence-based practice in the state. So I'm not, Caroline, I already sucked up like 3 minutes of your time, and I'm sorry about that. So without further ado, like, please enjoy, because Caroline is the best I've ever met, the best trainer. And I still remember your stories that you shared in the car during car rides, and I hope you're writing them down. Okay,
Yeah,
Caroline, please.
I'm going to write a book on you, and you're going to be in it.
Oh, no, 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 you skip me.
Oh, yes. You're a chocolate. You're a chocolate.
I don't know if it's going to bring any, value.
You used to be a shoe addict. So, no, we have some
True.
great
As I
stories.
said, she knows more about me than
Yeah.
I care to remember.
Yeah. And I recognize a lot of faces here. Hi, Molly, and then Abraham. You were just a kid when I first met you, I thought. So, and Brian, yeah, it's good to see. And it's also good to see I think, the variety of people who are on, the Youth Development Council. Uh, I was still with the Addictions Mental Health Division when Anya and I met. And this is when there was a lot of dismantling of many, many things that I thought was working. And here we are again, trying to redevelop, try to realign things. And if they would just realize we already invented the wheel, we don't have to reinvent it. But I know Department of Human Services is going through a new transition, and Oregon Health Authority is, and it just seems like everywhere I go, everyone is just reinventing the wheel. But I applaud you all, because I know you guys, your heart is where it should be in terms of working on behalf of our juveniles who really need, I think, a lot of our attention. The world has just changed so much. So for some reason or another, I don't, my slides won't share. So Melissa is going to be helping me with the slides. And recently, October was I don't know, the whole month of October, I just wasn't home. And one of the things that we were asked to do was to put a presentation for the Indian Child Welfare Act, which, as you guys are aware, that a lot of these young children who are referred to the child welfare system, many of them also end up, in the juvenile detentions. So I thought, instead of reinventing and doing a whole different presentation, I just adapted this one for this presentation. So we'll just go ahead. Yeah. So Anya, yeah, I'm the travel liaison. I got too many grants, and I've been mentoring who you guys might know as TJ or Tall Folks for the last 2 years. And it's kind of hard to, as we develop our Warm Springs health program, that we kind of do everything underneath one branch. And it's hard for one person just to take it all over. So I told TJ wants to keep me on for 5 years. I told him I'll give him a year, but I told him I'll give him another year. But yeah, Anya, one day I really am going to retire. But I guess it's just not this year, maybe the end of next year. But I don't want to just leave someone until they completely feel comfortable in what they're doing. So we could go on to some of the objectives that I'm going to be focused on. And if you see me grabbing water, I just got out of the clinic this morning and I have a fever blister on my tonsil. I never ever had that. So if I sound a little froggy, Anya, it's only because I'm kind of trying to overcome that. So there's kind of three things that I thought we could focus on. It just kind of giving you an overview of the journey that we've gone through with travel-based practices and how we end up to today and actually are able to build now uh, Medicaid for those children who are underneath the Oregon Health Plan. And if they're following our template in our process, that they could actually now bill for those services and get reimbursed for travel-based practices, which is something that we never ever thought that was really going to happen. But we are in a demonstration project, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Also, just to touch a little briefly on the Family First Prevention Services, the Family Prevention Act that was passed with child welfare and how that includes travel-based practices, and also to talk a little bit about how this intersects with the child welfare. You could go to the next slide. I always like to say, let's not make this too complicated. Let's use the KISS concept. Keep it simple, sweeties, because travel-based practices should not be complicated. I think once you put the puzzle together, you can see how it really fits in with a lot of things that we do with our tribal youth. And also other minority groups who are returning back to some of their traditional practices. This works. It even works in rural communities. However, for right now, the tribal population is the only one who actually has gone through the Center of Medicaid Services and got this approved in terms of being accepted. And we also have Oregon administration rules that have approved this. And I do know that Anya and I worked together years ago that include travel-based practice underneath the Youth Development Council also in terms of practices that can be approved. Next slide. I just want to kind of clarify in terms of what does this mean? In defining, Oregon travel-based practices, these are programs that are based on our cultural principles, and that each tribes have to define what those tribal principles are. So we're not trying to gather all of the practices and say, here's the manual, here, take it and go forth and replicate it, because we need to respect that every tribe is different. However, we did come together over the years and we did approve 21, and we probably have about another 8 that can be on the list. And so on the gray section there, I know you probably can't quite read it, but if anyone wants the manual, we can make that available to you all in terms of how that was broken down. But adventure-based basketball against alcohol and drugs, known as BAD, and many of you guys probably heard about those, and that's usually sponsored by the Umatilla tribe. Baby doll, cradle, canoe journey, family ceremonies and rituals, cradle board, culture camp, domestic violence group, treatment for men, family unity, healthy relationships curricula, the horse program or equine, um, Native American community mobilization, storytelling, positive Indian parenting, powwows, round dances, sweat lodge, talking circles, tribal crafts, tribal family activities, and tribal youth conferences is currently on those lists. And within each practice, there could be other practices within the practice, depending on how you implement it. Next slide. So in terms of looking in terms of some of the history, though, we have always discussed internally when a bill was passed in 2003 mandating evidence-based practice. At that time, the addiction to mental health was named in there, and so was the old Commission on Children and Family. And this is where youth development and was housed. And it mandated by the year 2009 that 75% of any funding that was coming through these programs had to be evidence-based. So this is where we kind of mobilized and decided, wait a minute, we've been doing a lot of these practices and we know that they work in our community and we cannot get reimbursed for them. We cannot even use the funding for these programs. So we mobilized and we began to look at all the programs that we've been doing and try to start putting it in a manual. And that was done in 2005. And Dr. John Spence, which some of you guys might know, him and I put a paper together to challenge this, even though I work for the state. We challenged this and we were given permission to go ahead and develop our own manual, our own approach in order to codify some of these practices and start connecting the evidence and to put a panel of our Native folks together and get the different folks nationally in terms of those tribal people have been working with many, many different tribes and to get them to work with us in order to say that our practices was equivalent to evidence-based practice. And we were able to do that. So what happened recently in number 3 there is the fact that we have never been able to get reimbursed. So we could have called some of our practices and kind of make them equivalent to other practices. For example, we could do a talking circle, which we could then say is group counseling. And since group counseling is accepted as a practice and it could be coded and get reimbursed through Medicaid or through some of our insurance companies, and we could say maybe a sweat lodge could be group counseling, but we could never say exactly what our practice was to get reimbursed. And so we worked with the Center of Medicaid Services, Julie Johnson, with the Oregon Health Authority, who's the Travel Affairs Director there. She was the one who did most of the paperwork with her staff. And we were able to get through the Center of Medicaid Services and start defining traditional healthcare practices using our model that we have put together since 2005. And again, like I had said, we do have the language in a lot of our Oregon administration rules, but we actually now have an Oregon administration rule that specifically defines travel-based practices. The thing is, though, we still need to protect our practices. And when we were working with the Center of Medicaid Services, we had to identify who qualifies in order to be able to get reimbursed for these services. And so ITU means Indian Health Services. So any practices that is done by Indian Health Services, and many of our tribes get Indian Health Services dollars. So they would qualify to get reimbursed. Tribes who are not under Indian Health Services, which we have some of our tribes who have taken over all of those services from Indian Health Services, and then urban. And we only have one urban program that qualifies, and that's NARA, the Native American Rehabilitation Association. This protects us from other programs just saying, I'm doing Native American programs, and so you need to reimburse us. These are only the 9 federally recognized tribes and NARA and Chamawa. Chamawa is an Indian Health Service program. You could go to the next slide. Now, we don't want to confuse this with what's been out there, I think, since 2015, which is known as traditional health worker. This was approved through Center Medicaid Services in 2015. And it's a series of curriculums, actually, that we have now been working on with the tribal traditional health worker and refining all the work that was done since 2015. And so this is not the same thing. So you might hear tribal traditional health worker, but this is not tribal-based practices. But it is going to be, they are already qualified to get reimbursed, but it's a series of trainings that they have to go through. So it's things like there's a peer mentor workbook. There's, I think there's a doula workbook, community health workers, and there's a navigator program that they're working on right now. And that's underneath Natalie Begay, who works underneath Julie Johnson with Oregon Health Authority. Okay, next slide. So when we start looking at our timeline, again, I'm going to probably overlap, here. It's been since our history that kind of started with us in about 22 when we start submitting the paperwork into the Center Medicaid Services. But then again, it started in 2003 when the federally recognized tribes came together. And I was still working with the state at that time and was able to kind of take the lead in terms of putting the manual together. We document everything. We have a manual. We've revised it probably 10 different times. And it was in 2007 that the Oregon Health Authority recognized our practices to be equivalent. And again, in 2022 is when we submitted it to Center Medicaid Services as 1115 demonstration waiver. And then we began to negotiate with the Center Medicaid Services. It's a long process, it's tedious, but it's the only way we're going to get it through the Center Medicaid since they're the one who reimburses for our practices. So it was in 2024 that we were able to get that permission. Next slide. So then it was in just recently in 2025 that we were able to get the Oregon administration rule through, and we had to identify different things in there so it could stand over time. So we have what we call traditional knowledge keepers, and those are individuals that are identified by each tribe, and they carry the knowledge of practice. And they have to go through a process that's identified by the tribe. And once they're selected, their names have to be submitted to the Medicaid services, which is underneath the Oregon Health Authority, which is underneath Jason Steiner. And they have to be registered within their system in order for them to be like a vendor or a provider, and that they can actually do these practices. So we had to go through that and come up with different formats in terms of making sure that the 9 tribes, Chamawa and Nara, is doing a similar process. And then, of course, we talked about the 21 practices that that's been approved already, and we still are pending on some others. In June of 2025, the Oregon Medicaid Management Information System, known as MIMS, is now up and ready to start billing for Indian Health Service tribes and urbans. And they will be paid at the same negotiated rate. And for tribes, that's 100%. And so if you're not familiar with Medicaid reimbursement, when our Medicaid clients go to services within the state has to put in, it's not quite 60-40, but it's 67 point something, but I'll just say 60-40. So when the feds reimburse the state of Oregon for Medicaid services, for the general population, they will pay 60%, and the state has to put in 40% for those providers. With tribes, though, it's 100%. So the state will reimburse, the feds will reimburse the tribes at 100% rate. So there is a difference, and it all has to be recorded in terms of whatever that rate is negotiated. In October 2025, Klamath tribe was the first tribe to actually submit their bills to get reimbursed. And then recently, this is brand new, as of November 14th, which was just last week, Friday, they got their payment. And so for us, it's like, whoa, this is taking us 20 some years to actually get CMS to finally reimburse us for travel-based practices. So now that Klamath has been successful, and that means the other 8 tribes now could follow suit. So next slide. So what my role is when I was retiring, Anya, was for the tribe, for me to go to all the tribes and to do training to make sure we're all on the same page. Because as you guys are aware of, Anya, especially you, the 9 tribes have changed significantly in terms of who's your contact now, for youth development. Who are those prevention coordinators that we trained years ago? I mean, who's left? And so there's a big, huge turnover. And so one of the first things we needed to do was get everyone on the same page. And so it was my task to come up with the training and to go to all the 9 tribes and NARA. The only one who hasn't followed suit is Chamawa yet, who does qualify. And I had to do a series of training that we had to get approved by the Center of Medicaid Services. So I wanted to make sure they all knew the history, that this just didn't fall out of the sky, that there was a lot of people who put this together. And the fact that the intent of every travel best practice is to reduce those risk factors by increasing the protective factors. And it doesn't make any difference which study that they're using. Is the fact that it all comes back to reducing those risk factors by increasing protective factors. May it be adverse child experiences, which they identify all those risk factors, but they don't always give a really good approach in terms of how they counteract those adverse childhood experiences. Same thing with historical trauma. We've done a lot of training on historical trauma. We could say, hey, you're suffering from historical trauma, but we don't always tell folks in terms of how they could recover from historical trauma. We always want to make sure that we're doing prevention, treatment, and aftercare, and that we're doing that all at the same time for mental health promotion as well as health promotion. And the fact that we need to make sure that we're grounded in some type of metrics or some type of outcome base. And so we've used the national outcome measurements that comes out of the SAMHSA. And the fact that then we tell you how you could bill. And so a lot of tribes don't just want to know how to bill. Just tell me how to bill. Said, no, you need to know why you're billing. It's just like, I went to the doctor finally this morning because I wasn't getting well. So I said, you know what, you need to go find out why you're not getting well. Well, now they told me why I'm not getting well. And now I could get well because everything I was doing was not going to work for me right now. I thought I just had a common cold. Well, this time, no. So it's the same thing. Why are you doing these practices? Next slide. So one of the things that we've integrated in all the training that we do is we do a lot of brain exercise because there's a lot of research on the brain right now and the correlation that comes along with a lot of the things that especially our folks when they get assessments and whatever, that there's a lot of connections in terms of brain theory. So we always kind of integrate a lot of exercise to exercise our brain just to demonstrate that this is important and that we need to include a lot of the brain research. Next slide. We also know that our Native people, oops, it just blank. I don't know what happened there, but I'll tell you what was on it. It wasn't blank, but sometimes when you do a PDF, it doesn't always translate. But one of the things that we know when we're working with our Native population is the fact that they don't talk, they don't trust, and they don't feel. And so we have to establish a relationship there to start stripping that away. And once they begin to trust, they have the ability now to feel and then to be able to talk about their feelings. So that was on that other blank slide. So we'll just, yeah, you could go forward again, Melissa. It just isn't there, but that's okay. So the Family First Act, these are not my slides, so I hope I could do them justice. But I was familiar with the Family First Act that came out in 2018 and did a lot of training for a lot of the child welfare programs, because to do prevention in child welfare was kind of like they knew that they needed to do this, but they weren't quite sure how do you prevent families from going into the system. And it's kind of rethinking in terms of how can you prevent kids going into the child welfare system. And the intent is not to place these kids. The intent is what can you do to keep them in the family? And so it's a whole different type of approach, and that we need to give the opportunity to the kids, the children, to be heard and to be seen. And how can we surround them with our tribal-based practices in order for them to start connecting them so they can understand their identity, to understand how they fit in with the bigger community. And that fact that our children need to feel validated and our children need to have hope. Okay, next slide. So this act was passed in 2018, and it's a new direction. So it's what is known as Title 4E, and the fact that they now have to have prevention programs. And they were limited to only 4 services. And now the next direction for Title 4E to go is to open up more community pathways and funding 10 services and the 22 travel-based practices. Now, some people say 21, some people say 22. It just depends on which list they are. I use the 22, but sometimes you only see the 21. So child welfare is on board in terms of including travel-based practices when they're working with our Native American population. Next slide. The focus on child welfare then is these 4 areas. Is I'm not sure if I would use these words, but that's their words. I didn't know they were candidates, but that's their words. So it's a child welfare candidates in terms of they place, if these children are determined to be unsafe in homes, you guys are probably familiar with this. They're at risk of voluntary placement. We need to reunify them with parents, and pregnant children with young adult transitioning out of foster care. That's child welfare candidates, or the juvenile justice candidates, which you guys are probably more familiar with. They're already involved with the juvenile justice system, and they're at risk of out of home placement, or they're reintegrating with their families after existing BRS facilities. Are youth at risk of entering the juvenile system? So you need to have prevention or early intervention diversion or beyond probation. And this is new, the self-sufficiency candidates. For those families that are receiving self-sufficiency, TANF, SNAP, and home visiting candidates. So this is their new plan in order to try to do more prevention work with these candidates. Next slide. So they're looking at children at imminent risk of foster care entry. And so they're looking at the candidacy groups for children and family. And what they're trying to do is to provide in their direction in terms of what practices should be used then for these groups. And so they came up with functional family therapy, parent-child interactive therapy, parents of teacher, motivational interviewing, healthy families, nurse-family partnership, family checkup, triple P, generation PMTO group, family spirit, and KEEP program. And they've added travel-based practices. And so this is their new direction in terms of child welfare that they wanted to let us know when I went to the child welfare or at the ICWA conference. So I just kept this in here because I thought it was important because I believe it impacts the population that you guys are targeting. The next slide. So still, they're leaving it up to the tribes to where they want to focus and what pathway they want to go towards. And doing travel-based practice, family spirit, motivation, interviewing, or the KEEP standard. And they've been providing some training to the tribes and making sure that they have access to these other practices. And the next slide, and of course, the intent is to have better outcomes for children and family. They're hoping that there can be fewer children in foster care, that there's going to be access to more mental health, substance use disorder, and parenting supports for families. And they want to expand funding for prevention services by increasing reimbursement underneath Title IV-E and having new potential funding for travel-based practices, and that they want to have an alignment of 4E and Medicaid funding for travel-based practices. And so we can make that happen now that we're in this demonstration project. Next slide. So what is travel-based practice? It's about connections. To me, I always think in visual, I always think in pictures. But for me, it's a puzzle. It's like a circle. It's connection. It's putting it all together. And next slide, it's about protective factors. And so when you look here, our children are surrounded by risk factors. And what keeps them going is surrounding them with protective factors. And sometimes the protective factors could be small in comparison to all the other things that are bombarding our young people. Next. So travel-based practices is about connection. It is counteracting those risk factors, is the training that I go out to do, educating people on the risk protective factor, educating them on the theory. It's the same principles that we've been using when we've been training our prevention coordinators for years and years and years. It's bringing our tribal-based cultural practices that we have been doing since time immemorial to bring it to the forefront. And our success is what we call our three grandmothers approval. Now, some of you guys might relate to this, some of you guys might not. A lot of rural communities relate to it, but many of our Native communities understand what we're talking about. There's usually three people in the community that's watching you all the time. And if you do something wrong, they're going to come over and they're going to tell you. And they don't hesitate to tell you if you're doing something wrong. And so I remember, first coming, because I was not raised on my reservation. And I was always afraid when I would go into the longhouse because I knew there was a lot of protocol. And, you're not born Indian. People say, oh, you're Indian, so you're born Indian, so you're supposed to know all the norms and values. No, you have to learn them. And so I did not want to get, my aunt used to knuckle me in the head if I did something wrong. And I didn't want to get knuckled in the head. So I would just study. I want to make sure that when they set the table, there's a process. And you got to follow that process. And if you don't follow that process, one of those elders are going to tell you, you did that wrong. You had to go certain directions. During the funeral, you can't do anything opposite. There's so many protocols, but they're not evident. If you're just coming in, you don't see all that. But if you do something wrong, you're going to be told. So there's always three people. We call them three grandmothers. It could be just three grandpas. It could just be three elders. It could just be three people. But there's usually about three of them that's going to keep us straight. That's our evaluation, usually. So the success is when we can say, I did it. So let's keep this in mind for the next slide. Okay. So travel-based practice and connection it has to do with bonding. That's the key element, the bonding. And you have to do this in person. I understand that sometimes we have to do virtual learning. I think, when we had COVID and we had to have our kids go through those pads, those iPads or computer pads, and they didn't have connection with the teacher. We saw the scores of our children significantly drop because our people are very social. Our Indian people are very social. In fact, you can't control them in the classrooms sometimes. You can't control them when you're doing lesson plans because they need that connection. So bonding is a key element. But bonding is about creating the opportunities and the skills and recognition. It's about creating patterns that is needed for consistency. And it's about returning back to our roots. So I always like to tell this story because it's a true story. When I was still working for the Addiction Mental Health Division, I got called in from the finance department, and they were saying, Caroline, seriously, we got a bill from Burns Paiute tribe, and they want to get reimbursed for drum making. So we can't be giving them money for drum making. And I said, well, what's the problem? Well, we just can't do that. I said, well, do you know what drum making is? Well, no, I guess you just put materials together and make a drum. I said, no, it involves so much more than that. You have to have a teacher. I said, in order to make a really good sounding drum, you have to have someone show you how to do it. It's about steps. You have to get that hide, you have to soak it, and you have to know when you soaked it enough. You have to know how to stretch that, onto the framework, whatever framework you're going to use for your drum. I said, and it has to be done in steps. You cannot skip a step. That teacher is going to bond with that student. And once they do that and they do it the correct way, they're going to have their own personal drum and it's going to have a beautiful sound. I said, and then once they finish that drum, they're going to showcase this. So now the child not only bonded with their instructor, their teacher, their community members are going to come out, their aunts, uncles, mom, cousin, they're all going to come out with the whole group of kids who went through the drum making class. They're going to go out there, they're going to learn a few songs, and the community is going to praise them. And that individual is going to say, I did it. Look, I did it. And I mean something. I contribute to this community. I said, that's what drum making is about. Oh, okay. So then he approved it. This is so much more than just seeing what you see on paper. It's the whole process. It's giving that child the opportunity to learn. It's teaching him or her the skills. And it's just saying, good job. Once he had that drum and he could hear his own sound, then he realized I did something and I'm connected. That's what travel-based practices is about. Next one. Oh, I just told you the whole thing. Okay. Yeah, you had to have a teacher, and that has to be determined by the tribe. And so I told you in the new organ administration rule, we identify a knowledge keeper. And this is what we had to provide for our demonstration project, is saying that we have knowledge keepers and we have a process to identify them. They are the one who have that experience. They're the one who could pass on that tribe's culture to the next generation. And it's a teacher who was taught, and they're the one who's passing it on. Next slide. So again, the recipe for bonding is creating the opportunity, the skills and recognition. It's the KISS concept. Keep it simple, sweetie. And the next slide. And that bonding has to come from the family. Family can teach different travel-based practices. The community could do the teaching. School could teach it, and individual and peers. And for me, if I have trouble with my iPhone, I'm not going to go to someone my age. I'm going to go to a youngster. They're going to tell me how. I mean, they're my teacher. So teachers doesn't have to necessarily be an elder. It could be someone who has mastered that particular knowledge. And that's what makes this so significant, because you're looking at knowledge keepers, not necessarily elders again. Next slide. It's that step-by-step process. it's dependent upon steps, and you cannot miss a step. And so when you start relating this in terms of lifetime skills, you can't leave something out. You can't leave a major step and assume that you're going to have a completed product. And so your teachers are leading by example. It's hands-on. It has to be, one-to-one or several people to a group. And it's adjusting to each learning style. And so if someone needs more instruction, the teacher is the one who should be in charge of that. So if you have some learning disabilities within your group, the teacher needs to adapt to that. If you have some people in your group that wants to go faster than others, then you could separate that group and put them together so they could teach each other. Or you could get someone who is a lot faster and have them teach someone who's a slower learner. And so it's all about that interaction, is that connection, but it's step by step. Next. So what we're looking at with travel-based practices, and I don't know if anyone else has dug this deep into what we do, but I don't know, I did. So it's about creating structure. And so every time we go out there and we're doing our different practices, we're creating structure. We're creating opportunity for a lot of our kids to realize this is something new. This isn't something just like reading and math and what you call the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, even though they're not really R's. But anyway, this is an opportunity to do some things that are connection with our culture. It develops our cognitive abilities, and it's connecting with our different brain stages. We do a lot of conscious discipline to teach about the brain connection, and it's about developing skills. So let's put this into practice, and let me see if I could do justice. So let's get into our next slide. Cradle boards. Cradle boards is a tradition, and returning back to our traditional ways by putting our babies back on their backs. So I used to be in the state mortality, I guess, group. We had to research all kids 18 and under who died. So every child who died, I was on the task force to identify if this was a natural death, if this was maybe abuse, neglect, and every child has to be categorized within the state. And there was one year where we had a very significantly high SIDS rate. I mean, it was just really out of proportion. And so part of the task of our advisory board was also to come up with strategies to prevent this. So we did this for SIDS. We did this when we realized there was a high rate of death related to firearms. We did one for drowning incidents, and that was our task. And it really hit me with the SIDS because I knew our tribe was going through a high level of SIDS death. And I was with the state, and we had some tobacco money. And there's a correlation between low birth rate and smoking and using drugs the first trimester. And so I was meeting with our tribe, and I asked the question, I said, how come we don't use cradle boards anymore? And the elders told me, well, because we were prevented. Well, what do you mean? They said, well, during the boarding school, they forbid us to use the boards. And so that was removed from us. I said, and so what's keeping us from doing it again? I don't know. I said, look, I'm gonna give you some funds, and let's find some of our elders who could still teach us. And we called the program back to the boards, and we put money into this. and we significantly reduced SIDS. So the research at that time said that they got data from Europe and Canada, and they found out that there was a correlation between babies who were not put on their backs, that they were put on their stomachs, they were put on their side, and there was a higher rate of SIDS. But when they put the baby flat on its back, it significantly reduced. They also said that some of the deaths that we had to go through the autopsy and whatever was co-sleeping, kids who were put too close to the wall and they slid down the wall and they suffocated. And so by knowing how they died, then we could come up with a program to counteract that. But for our tribe, especially Warm Springs, when they were put back on its back, SIDS almost a zero now. And we offer back to the board classes on a regular basis. So we go to the next slide so I could explain this a little bit better. So this is what Cradle Boards does. It's a step-by-step process. So they go to this class with maternal child health, and they're taught how to put a proper baby board together. If you miss a step, the baby's going to get out of that cradle board. If you don't put the stitches on right, it's going to rip. If you want a baby with a wild-shaped head, then put a little cushion underneath its base of its neck, and the baby will come with a round shape. If you want a flathead baby, then don't put anything on there, and the baby come out flathead. If you want to avoid what you call it when your legs go crooked? Yeah. See, my memory's going. But anyway, if you want the baby to walk straight, then put a little pad in between its legs, and then it will realign the legs. But the interesting thing was when I was meeting with the elder, when I found two elders to do the class, she said, Caroline, she said, this is a parenting class. Oh, okay. She said, when you are unstrapping the baby on the baby board, it forces you to have eye contact. She said, what's important for babies? To have eye contact. See, you got eye contact because you're focused on the baby. She said, and you could sing to the baby. You could coo to baby because the baby is already cooing back to you. She said, and then you're touching the baby. That's very important for the first few months of the baby. You're touching the baby. The baby knows that. You're connecting to the baby. You're interacting with the baby. You're teaching the baby skills. It's a cognitive. So when the baby knows you're going to take them out of the cradle board, they get all excited because they anticipate that, because it's a pattern that you're teaching them. And then once you get them, bathe or whatever, or you cuddle them, you walk them around, and now the baby needs to go to sleep. You put the baby back into the cradle and you're touching them, you're cooing back to them. The cradle board then has a bowl, and then you put the blanket over the baby, not a heavy blanket, but just a light blanket, and the baby goes to sleep. They're learning patterns. So you don't have trouble with them crying at different periods of the day. You're teaching them how to sleep through the night. And you're teaching them because of the fact that this is a parenting program. And I said, whoa, that was really, intense. And that's what we've been doing. And we've reduced SIDS to almost nothing. Usually when we do have a SIDS death, it's because if they did have it on the cradle board, they didn't use it properly. You have to size the baby, and you get baby boards different sizes. And so you have one for the infant. So the first baby board stays with that baby for life. So a lot of our folks now know that this is my baby board, can't be used for anything else but my baby. This is my own baby board. And so you teach them about designs. You could talk about different family connections. by the different types of material or designs you put on that baby board. So that's an example of one. Okay, the next one has to do with canoe family journey.
Hey, Caroline, this is Brian. I'm just gonna jump in. We're almost to the top of the hour.
Okay.
Just want to give you a little time. I don't know if we time.
Okay, I can speak to it. I can speak to it.
Maybe, yeah.
And Caroline was gracious enough to give us a few extra minutes when I
Extra
did
minutes,
ask her if
okay.
she was available to go over. I think
Okay.
we built that in, right, Cord? A little bit. We built in a little bit of extra time with Caroline if we needed to.
Yeah, we may just go through a little bit through our break and make sure we have a little time for questions, but I bet because we're almost at 11, so just doing a time check.
No problem. Okay,
Thanks,
so
Caroline.
canoe journey here. Let's go to the next slide. I can speed this up. Now, the canoe journey is a step-by-step process, again, because the canoe journey is not just the canoe. They meet throughout the whole year. So they're making that connection. They're bonding. They're learning from their teachers. They're learning together as a team. They're learning the songs, the protocols. They're learning the skills. They learn how to set up camp. So it's not just the canoe journey. It's a whole year process of bonding together. Okay, the next one. The culture camps has everything in it. There's so many things in here. It's just not a camp. And we just call it camp because we couldn't call it anything else because most of us do our camps during the summer. So you could go to the next slide. So again, anything that we do in culture camp, may it be teaching them how to fish, maybe carving, drumming, it's still step by step. It's still having teachers. It's transferring knowledge. It's connection, interaction, and the cognitive is there. Okay, the next one. Yep. Okay, it's the domino effect here. We could go to the next slide. It's about creating positive memories, telling their stories, learning to overcome trials and tribulations. It's learning to laugh, learning to reestablish trust, to feel, to talk, to trust. It's about belonging. I'm important. I'm part of a bigger world. Okay, next slide. And it's about saying, I did it. I did this. It's a pride. It's being validated. I'm being seen. I believe now I could do other things. Next slide. So I think the only thing I want to add is that the National Professional NPC, National Professional Consortium with Juliet Mackham in the group, they did a comparison between the counties and the tribes, and I think you guys are familiar with that report. And the fact that our Native kids statistically have always shown lower scores for recidivism because of that culture connection. And I don't know if they've had the opportunity to look at other minority groups, but we do know that our tribal-based practices works for us. And I truly believe, and I hate to say this, but I truly believe our Native kids are going to be healthier in the long run than the general population because of our cultural practices. And that's it. Questions?
This is Daniela. This was so rich and such a crazy amount of information. Is it possible to get access to your slideshow? Are you comfortable with that? I would love to be able to chew on it or pieces of it moving forward.
Yeah, Melissa has, did I send it to you too, Anya? Or just to Melissa?
I will share out all of the materials from today's meeting and yesterday's meeting. Yep. We will get all of them. Thank you, Caroline.
And Caroline, I also wanted to say thank you for the presentation. Just the history you shared on different practices and rituals, and then the journey it took to finally get full reimbursement was just really powerful to hear. And I also appreciated all the tools and resources you highlighted throughout the presentation because I think it'll be valuable in continuing to enrich the work we do as part of the council, as part of Youth Development Oregon. So thank you again for sharing your time with us. And I had the same question as Daniela, so it's good to hear that we'll also get the slide deck.
Oops. Great.
This is Corey Bucher. I have a question. When we had our last council meeting, we were in Warm Springs and we visited the elementary school, and there was a drumming group which was led by a fairly young man who I think, he maybe was, in his early 20s, and he was teaching drumming to some of the other, I guess they were like between like 9 and 12, 10 and 13 years old. And my question or my thought was around um, when young people are participating in these practices, I would imagine that some of them want to become teachers or knowledge keepers. And what is that, like, do young people often say, like, I want to also be able to teach this and to be pulled into wanting to continue the traditional practice as a teacher based on their experience of learning it? Um, and is that a part of like how this might look, is that there's attention to like how to get the next generation to become the teachers and to pass the knowledge on?
I think in terms of just from what I've observed over the years, I remember when I first came home to Warm.
I'm going to share my invite because a year ago when I did that, it turned out that I shared.
Sorry.
Oops. Okay.
Audio coming through. I'll mute my
Okay.
mic.
No, so I just know over the years the fact that I see that happening more and more and more as our people begin to feel more comfortable with who they are. It wasn't always cool to be Indian. It wasn't, you go to the school system, you'd be ridiculed, whatever. But I think by surrounding over the years, the fact that this is okay, that I see more people coming out wanting to help others. We do respect elders here, but we also respect knowledge. And so I see more and more and more of that as time goes by. So is there a program to try to teach the younger generation? There actually is in some cases, in terms of using, our youngsters as teachers. Should we be doing more of that? I believe we should. Um, uh, but I see that opportunity here and there, usually during our summer camps, because there are not enough teachers to go around. I mean, I don't know when you guys were here, but I do know when we were having our summer camp, we had like 170 kids and we had like 4 teachers. And so they had to use some of the older kids who already knew um, how to do the different um, task, or event or the practice, and utilize them to teach younger kids. And I think it's a sense of pride too, when our youngsters could teach youngsters. And this is what we do with the baby dolls circle, is that we used to just make mini baby boards, but then we realized that their hands were not able to manipulate like an adult. So we give them what we call baby doll circle, and we give them these little, what we call mush dolls, where their hands could fit, like there's only 3 eye outlets instead of like 10 or 12. And so they can maneuver 3 of them, and the holes are really big, so they could put the thread through, so they could put a baby in a little cradle board. And so there's little different ways to adapt that. Uh, and sometimes kids are better teachers because for some reason, they pay more attention. And I think as adults, we want to rush through things. And kids are more able to say, no, you didn't do that right. Let me teach you the right way. So yeah, no, this is something I definitely agree with that we should be doing more of.
I see Zan has her hand raised as well.
Good morning, and thank you for this wonderful presentation. I just think that I'm emotional. there is so much wisdom embodied in this practice, and I would love to see it expanded beyond the tribal community and into everything we do. I think there's a lot that we can learn from what you were doing, and I was wondering whether you had ideas about how we can carry some of these basic understandings and learnings into the other work that we fund.
Well, you know, before I've done this presentation or different presentations for minority communities and rural communities. I think these type of practices are hard to replicate like in bigger cities because there's no really community. You really need a community. So if you could identify communities, and we did this with Oregon Together years ago in terms of actually working with defining communities within bigger, population groups. So it is possible. And I think our principles are not maybe unique. It just so happened that we're able to do this with our tribal communities. But I'm of a Hispanic descent and Hawaiian descent and Native. And so I could make this work in the three groups. And when I worked for the state, I did a lot of work with the Asian population, and they're very similar. There's more similarities, I think, among tighter knit communities, and rural communities could use this concept too because they're more tight knit. So yeah, it can be expanded. It just so happened that, because we are sovereign nations, we have the ability to go forward and to um, maybe, push for our rights as sovereign nations within, because we're a nation within the bigger nation here. So that's where I think we were able to put our focus. But no, if I had my way, I think this would work almost everywhere. You just have to identify your community.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This is Brian. I'm just gonna jump in. I know we're getting close. Don't see more hands. Just appreciation. Uh, Caroline, Anya, thanks for doing the introduction, helping make the connection. Y'all may recall that TJ was at our quarterly meeting, and when was that, in September? The Cord kind of referenced when we visited the Warm Springs Community School. So really given that kind of, you know, I don't know, I want to say nudge, but it wasn't really a nudge from TJ. It was more like, hey, y'all can be doing more, a little kick in the pants. And for those who are newer, we thought this would be just a good chance to reset, refresh, and orient folks, right? Our juvenile crime prevention work um, is direct funding to tribes, and in not in all cases, but in many cases, those funds are being used by tribes to support tribal practices. And so some of the programming you saw in there, Canoe Journey, and other things. So, and that just this, Zan, Caroline, your response, the applicability, of this work is very present. We fund some other organizations that are kind of more doing culturally responsive work, and they have similar kind of values around working with their culture and their communities. So, and this is where it starts, and this is where it has started. So deep appreciation um, to Caroline and everybody for kind of listening in, um, trying to not be distracted, right, by other things. Um, I don't know. Anya, do you want to say anything to
Yes,
close
I
this out?
do. I just want to thank Caroline for sharing her wisdom and knowledge and history and just helping us understand how things work. And while being sick, I'm just so concerned about your throat now. So I don't want to keep you any longer than we absolutely have to, just because I know this retirement thing is not happening, but I want you well. Just we all want you well. So thank you so much, like from the bottom of my heart. I don't know about you guys, I was getting teary a couple of times, although I've heard this presentation in different variations before. So thank you, Caroline, for being here, for just sharing. Please take care of yourself. Otherwise, I'm gonna text Popple to make sure that you're taking your medication and everything.
Oh no, he already uses Puerto Rican remedies on me.
Oh, I'm sure you've been, yeah, you're getting the treatment. Anyway, well, thank you. Thank you. Love you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Or do we want to take a little break? I know we had 15, but it's probably going to end up being about 5 if we want to kind of keep it moving.
Yeah, I think if we could do maybe 5 and then come back and do a quick icebreaker, and then we'll jump into the next stage here. So if everyone wants to come back about 11:20, that would be great.
All right.
Thank you. All right, we're back. We're back on here. I'm gonna ask Paul to get us warmed back up, and then we'll move into the next section of our festivities today.
All right, thanks, Gord. So yeah, we're gonna go into some breakout rooms here in a minute. But as we're coming back, that'd be a little fun to use the React area of Zoom. So if you look down at the bottom part of your screen, you should have a reaction. It looked like a lot of people were doing some reactions. So if you can go ahead and pull that up, and just go ahead and use a thumbs up to show me that you found where we're at. So there you go. Just shoot a thumbs up there. All right. So if you go to the ellipse and the three dots, go to that in the reactions for me, and then go to the animal section. So I'm always fascinated by these things. So if you are in the animals and nature section, you can see that the first one is a dog or a cat. Everybody find those? I see people looking really close to their screen. So let's go ahead and see what type of animal do you prefer? Cat, dog, maybe you prefer a mouse. I don't know. Just go ahead and select one of those, and so people can kind of get an image of who you are in there. All right. So penguins, Ali. I see Anya cat. That doesn't
Or
surprise
can you mute? I think.
All
My
right.
neighbor's talking, sorry.
Let's see. Where else should we go here? So go ahead and go to the travel section. This is a fun one. So go ahead and hit the airplane, travel and places. So if you were given any option of any form of travel, what would you prefer? There's lots of little options there. Go ahead and take and figure out which one. I think I'm going to do the speedboat here. There we go. So all right. Secure. Oh, a helicopter. It's always fun. Oh, a train. Oh, that's a good one. Lindsay, I like it. See what is that? That was a carousel, I think. All right, so let's do one more here. Go ahead and go to the food option because we're gonna get going close to lunch. Let's see. Anybody have an option there that they're thinking that they're gonna have for lunch? Oh, there's some ones that would be interesting to add there, but let's see. What's the food option y'all are thinking about for lunch? Pasta. I think let's see the ones that I know I have in the fridge. I have leftovers. They probably don't have much of a leftover there, but I'll maybe do a hamburger. Let's see. All right. So, all right. Well, it looks like we got warmed back up. Cord, are you going to be the one that's introducing the breakouts, or do you want me to take that? It's up to you. So, thanks for playing along with that. That was fun. There's lots of emojis. That's better than Teams. Teams does not have that many things on there. So, thanks, Melissa, for being on Zoom for us.
Yes, thank you. This is Melissa Cord. I'm interrupting just to note that that Wes has just joined us as well.
Oh,
So
perfect.
Wes joined while food emojis were floating up on our screen.
I didn't think about that when I was thinking of an icebreaker. Wes, hello. I haven't met you, but I was the one that was doing that. So
Yeah, hey, welcome, Wes. Happy you could join us a bit early. Just going to move some things around on my screen here. Yeah, I'm happy to just kind of lay out what is happening next for the breakout conversations. For folks who were here yesterday, you've gotten a taste of this. We did it in person, and a couple of us were online as well. But today we're going to be doing these breakouts via breakout rooms entirely in our virtual meeting. Um, so something we had shared yesterday was that these breakout conversations, one, tie back to our strategic plan. No problem, Nate. I saw your message there. We hope you'll join us back when you can. So the three conversations we're going to have today, I'll quickly talk about what they are and then ask the folks from each group to give maybe a 2-minute overview of what it is. So we've got the designing a YDO impact brief template. This was something we identified in our plan. Really, we wanted to work on creating some sort of like policy briefs or program briefs that we might be able to use to better share the work that we do, to inform lawmakers, the public, the field about our work. And so we wanted to have some conversation about what those might look like, what should be in them. Guiding questions for our Youth Development Oregon data collection and reporting. This is another project in our plan where we really wanted to define some of the things we're trying to learn from our reporting so that what we are collecting better reflects what we want to share or talk about. And those two topics, you may find as you're talking in those groups that there's connection between those things, and that's intentional. The last topic today, and of our three, we have youth recruitment and engagement, related to a strategic plan efforts to both uh, develop a recruitment strategy for the council as a whole, and specifically to do a better job to improve our efforts to attract youth members to the council. And so we want to talk about some of the places that we might go and how we might work to better recruit young people to the council and support their onboarding. Um, so I'm going to first, I think I'll pass it to Sally and Jared if you want to take a couple of minutes just to talk a little bit about what we're going to discuss in your session.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat about that. And then, Jared, you can fill in the blanks of whatever I missed. We are going to be talking about impact briefs, and this is a result of last year's retreat. We had really dynamic conversation around the YDD staff being able to write up little blurbs that capture the critical pieces about the grants that we have awarded and that we oversee. And so it is our hope in this conversation that we'll be able to get some more details of like what are the right things for us to include, how much data, how long should these be. We have some ideas in our mind about what they could look like, and we would just love some feedback on that. Jared, is there anything else I should add or that you want to add to that?
I think you got it. I think, yeah, the main things to discuss today are just kind of twofold, just format of the briefs, what should it look like, and potential topics. What should we discuss? Is there anything that folks want us to cover? That's it.
All right, I've talked with Molly. I'm going to talk next about the guiding questions for reporting topic. I was originally going to be the note taker for this, but unfortunately, Bill Hansel was unable to join us today. So I'm going to facilitate this with Molly Burns. And really, we want to talk about, we'll kind of give you some sense of where we are at with our reporting in a general sense, what we collect now, and what kinds of questions we are trying to answer with our reporting as it stands. But we want to let you kind of talk about what you might want to know more about from our programs, whether that's answerable with the data we collect, if there are things we maybe should be looking to collect in the future that will help us to answer those questions. And if there are other things you want to know about our grants, just how we might look at collecting that through our reporting processes now or in the future. And Molly, anything you want to add to that?
Nope, that sounds great. Looking forward to
Perfect.
the conversation.
And then I think I'll pass it over to Paul to talk about the youth recruitment piece.
Sounds good. Brian, jump in too. You and I are in this one. But if you've taken a look at the priority projects, there is quite a few times that youth and youth engagement and youth recruitment is identified in the strategic plan. So we are going to have a conversation around where it makes sense for it. We started that yesterday a little bit with our outreach. It kind of evolved into it. This is going to be a little bit more specific to where we want to fully recruit young people, as well as maybe a little broader YDC recruitment structure as well. So we'll kind of morph it because I think we started it quite a bit yesterday. Brian, anything you want to add to that?
Thanks, Paul. I'll just keep it quick because I know we want to get into conversation. The one I'll say on the data one, I think we're talking more, probably we're focusing more on our competitive grant making. I mean, but a lesson that we can share or learn for those who are working, for example, more on our juvenile crime prevention work, and as Caroline referenced earlier and today, right, NPC Research, we have a research partner that does such an outstanding job of giving us third-party analysis and evaluation. So perhaps there are things that are happening with the juvenile crime prevention, um, like reporting and evaluation that we can learn from. So bring those ideas into that conversation when you're there. Um, because it's like we've heard from legislators in particular about the importance of that third party validation around our programs funded through juvenile crime prevention, including supporting tribal practice. And then on the youth piece, yeah, we spent a fair amount of time, or it seemed we spent, not in a bad way, but in a really productive way, time yesterday with this topic. So feel free to bring any additional thoughts. We got some new faces in the conversation and voices in the conversation today, so appreciate that. I'm just wondering on time in order to get to Wes around 1. Maybe the break will be a little shorter. So, just keep in mind, we've got 30, you might get a 15 or 20-minute break given the time since it's about 11:30 now. So I'll close my mouth so we can get into it. And I think Melissa, Scott, and maybe Cord have ideas about where people are going to be sent. So that's going to happen virtually. Back to you, Cord or Melissa.
Yeah, Melissa, I was going to ask, how are
Oh,
we going
Cord,
to
you're
do
muted.
breakout
Sorry.
sessions?
I saw Melissa unmute, so I was waiting for Melissa.
I'm ready to put folks in breakout rooms if we're ready to go. Remind me how long we're in the room. Just remind me.
Cord, we want to do 15? You're muted. I see
You're
Sally
muted
shaking her
again.
head.
Yeah, to keep us on track for time, and we don't have as much need for transition time, so I think 15 minutes, and then maybe
Yeah.
move us, and then we'll do another 15. And I
15.
think,
Okay.
Melissa, your time announcements are very helpful too.
Okay, great. I will open all the rooms. Thanks all.
Hey, Melissa, can you hear me while we're
Yep.
transitioning?
Yep.
You're just going to pull everybody to the next room, right?
I'm going to give it my best shot. It'll be interesting to see how it works. Yeah, thanks.
I have no idea. I've never done it from your side, so
Right.
we'll figure this out.
Yes. And I have a question for Wes to see, Wes, if you would like to join one of these rooms, you're welcome to join
If I'm
one.
not intruding, that I would love to.
No, these are the options. Let me set my timer real quick so I know how long I'm putting folks in these rooms. These are the breakout session options.
I go 3. Yeah, for sure.
We'll put you in room 3. All
That'd
right.
be awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Whoops, let's see if I can assign you to room 3. Participants. How do I do this? Assign to room 3. Youth recruitment. All right. I think you're just going to get zapped in there, I think. Let's see if this works.
Recruit, engaging and recruiting young members to join the council. And Tanisha actually brought a great example. When she was in school, they had a goal to put together a prom in a school that never had a prom before. So they worked and they made it happen, and they did. And that goes back to what Caroline said at the end of her presentation. I did it. I made the drum. I sang the song. I put the prompt together and I went there. So some kind of tangible thing to do, a task. That's all.
Thank you. Oh yeah, thanks everybody. Oh, there's Cord. Cord, I'm turning to you to I don't know if we want in the 10 minutes or 9 minutes to lift up any very quick thoughts. But we will break at 12:30. So Cord, I don't, what do you, what is your pleasure?
I think it'd be great if we have a few minutes for folks to share. I might just as a warning say that Molly, I'd love for you to talk about what jumped out at you in our conversations because I did talk a lot, but we heard some great questions and feedback from the participants in our group. Does anyone want to volunteer to go first? Just share out highlights from your breakout discussion.
Which Molly did you mean, Cord?
Oh,
Just
sorry, Molly Burns. I was going to ask my um, data Molly.
Well, I can volunteer to go first.
Thank you.
I was so engaged in listening to all the issues that were raised. And I mean, one thing that jumped out was every single session talked about a different aspect of data. And so just kind of the absolute frustration around being in multiple systems with multiple grantors and being asked to yet again gather more data. And so that really needs to be on our radar as we talk about different types of data that the agency is collecting. And and so connected to that was really a desire for follow-up that really understanding what the data is telling us and how we as an agency are using that to communicate with the governor and legislatures and whatnot. And so really to show not just the impact in youth lives, but also the benefit to the youth that we serve overall by continuing funding. So that definitely jumped out. Inquiries about financial data and how we're using that and how that might guide some processes. That was also brought up. And then I think the third session was really challenging us in terms of the youth grant uh, data world, that we might really be challenged to really look at outcomes and impact in the youth lives that they've been able to do on the other side of the agency's house. And so I think what came out of that is that we're really laying a foundation by bringing the youth grants data collection together through re-engagement, the JWR and the CI worlds, and so that we can really develop some kind of system. So there was a challenge in the third session for us really to seriously look at our data and validate it.
And I guess just adding on to that, I mean, I just thought it was interesting how, even just defining, outcomes, especially for things like community investment, where it's, not as, clearly defined, and then, what kind of data do we even need to collect to show that's been successful? And then, yeah.
Can I popcorn it over to the impact brief folks?
I can talk a little bit.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, one of the themes that came out a lot around the briefs is knowing who our audience is and in what context, what kind of messaging to provide to those audiences, and the idea of kind of also looking back kind of at the local level, right? Providing information and support so they can better also tell not only the impact they have, but how also kind of this our partnership, if you will, right, between us and them. But that was kind of a constant one, I think, in all our sessions, specifically around legislative leadership, down to kind of the local level, and then also youth as kind of being the main audiences, if you will, around these briefs and information that we put out. The idea around also the name recognition problem that we kind of have, you know, in those circles, right? If people say, well, what do you do or who are you? Or that's another thing, developing that also within our council. What's our, 2-minute description? What's our longer one? And, more in-depth explanation of what we do. So, if anybody else wants to add anything, please jump in.
Yeah, I can add something. And I think in terms of format of the briefs, just thinking creatively, videos perhaps, that came up, just powerful videos. And so just having a QR code on, the piece of paper at the bottom of the brief that says go here for, whatever it might be. And then we could compile videos of just uplifting youth experiences. That could be pretty powerful.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add was, and I'd love to hear more of what Wes is going to talk about later today, but this idea of like local influence and a number of council members touched on this as well, of like that if we can have something that is appropriate to share with local mayors, city council, county commissioners, folks at that level, that those folks can also be influential champions for YDO and ultimately potential champions for additional funding. And so again, this piece of like being able to share the information with the folks who need to have it, who really can help move the needle on things. So was a solid, excellent contributions from everybody.
All right, I'll pass it over to Brian and Paul on our youth council member recruitment conversation.
Well, I wonder if folks who participated wanted to share any particular thoughts before.
I thought they captured that one pretty well. It's interesting hearing what the span across our three groups and what different themes emerge.
Couple things that were shared in our group on conversation around youth recruitment and engagement are, how do we continue to remove barriers and make it accessible and easy to understand? Um, Maybe there might be opportunities to continue to consult with our youth committee to inform the work around recruitment and engagement so that the messages are accessible, right? We have the right supports in place. We're thinking creatively around how we structure that outreach. We also talked about with the existing councils and organizations that are engaging youth directly, how might we utilize those networks to help inform this work, and tried to tie in conversations from yesterday on, the relevancy of serving on the council and the support, and perhaps a really tangible set of things we start with is around youth-led grant making, right? And identifying clear problems of practice. Youth are identifying that we're co-developing the work together in a very meaningful, authentic way. And that also, requires important shifts from us as YDO, as a council. So we named that in our conversations as well.
Thanks everybody for your contributions. That was waiting. I was doing the awkward pause that Brian was encouraging me to do yesterday, and but it didn't work for Brian. He made me talk, but that's okay. But no, I appreciate the information and the thoughts around that work and to put it the way Jeff said it, I appreciate it too. Finding the right serving size, I think, is an important piece of like how do we continue to move this work forward, but also not maybe take a full plate full and then realize that that's a little too much, right? So how do we do that? So more to come. Cord, I'll pass it back to you.
All right. Well, I think we are now due for a short break before we get into the next presentation from Wes. And I think we're right on time, actually. I think I was going to give us about 30 minutes so folks have a chance to get a bite to eat. It is around lunchtime, a little bit of a longer stretch. So if everybody could maybe be back, I mean, I think it'd be great to shoot to be back about 5 to 1, just so that we can get started on time at 1 o'clock with Wes's presentation on ADPC. With that, I think we can pause until then. Thanks, everyone. For joining us again here on camera. Hope you've had a nice break, and certainly folks, happy to see folks eating. Nourish yourselves. Feel free to do so as we get into our next session. Give folks a few more minutes to sign on, and then I'll introduce Wes. Wes, is there anything? Do you have theme music or anything you want me to make sure I say in your introduction?
No.
Okay.
I love the Rocky theme song. So I mean you can
Yeah.
do that, but yeah, that's no, I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good.
I'd have to ask Melissa for help because I'm not that good at getting music to play in the meetings, but all right. Yeah, we may have some folks who are here and off camera. You can choose to eat with or without your camera, and I think Wes will be sharing some slides, so I think that works. Um, I really appreciate everyone making their way back. Thanks for your engagement, participation so far. We have a couple more presentations this afternoon from our partners. The first is going to be from Wes Rivers from the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission, ADPC. Um, for some of us in the division where we've been familiar with their work, Brian and I meet with Wes on a regular basis, and we have both some statutory obligations to work together, and as ADPC is developing some of their work plans for the years ahead, we've been identifying some ways we might work together, and so I think this will be a great opportunity particularly for council, to learn more about ADPC, what they do, their priorities and mission, and I think how we are able to align and collaborate is something we hope folks will get excited about in this presentation. So, without further comment, Wes, thank you for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Wes Rivers. I'm a senior policy analyst with the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission. I use he, him pronouns. I staff our youth and prevention work. And I am the lead liaison between ADPC and YDO. And so I want to talk a little bit today about our comprehensive plan that we just finished up. We voted on it last week. And I think the unique relationship between ADPC and YDO and why I think it's really cool. So I'd love to talk about that. And we have some discussion questions about that at the end. So I'm going to zoom through some of the first stuff. Then we're going to talk about what's in the plan that relates to YDO, and then we can have that larger discussion if that's all right with everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. If folks want to give me a thumbs up if they can see, great, cool. All right. Here's just basically what I said. So what is the ADPC? What is the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission? And I heard you all talking about name recognition issues earlier. Believe me, we suffer from the same thing. There's about half a dozen combinations of these four letters in state government, and we have OHA email addresses. So people often get confused about what we do and who we are. We're a separate independent state agency. We have shared services with OHA, and so that's why we appear. We have a similar relationship with OHA as YDO does with ODE. They host us, but we are an independent commission. We're charged with improving access to evidence-based, evidence-informed, and culturally informed substance use prevention, substance use disorder treatment, and recovery support services by establishing state policies and holding participating state agencies accountable for carrying out those policies. That is our charge. Our commission is about 22 people and represents a large uh, or excuse me, a diverse perspective on substance use across the gamut of treatment to law enforcement to kind of auxiliary services. We have 14 state agencies who help us do this work. So we really work I mean, the big one is OHA, obviously with respect to treatment and recovery services, but we're trying to make sure that folks understand that we have a role with all of these agencies as it relates to substance use. Our big way we do that is through the development of a comprehensive 5-year plan. So the commission's been around since the 70s in the 1970s for our young people, for in some way. It has transformed over time. It started out very criminal justice focused and law enforcement focused. It has since become more treatment and recovery focused over time. I think with the passage of Measure 110, there was a little bit of confusion about what the ADPC did versus the community advisory board that supports behavioral health resource networks and the implementation of Measure 110. And then there was the pandemic. So our first big comprehensive plan never really got off the ground, to be quite honest. It was our first pancake, as my boss likes to say. And this is our chance to really more fully develop it with the support of our governor and a really strong commission moving this work forward. Great question. The thing that we have is dedicated funding for staff. I think that is the really important piece. So a lot of our work is coordinating, and I'm just read the question that was in the chat. Does the ADPC have dedicated funding to implement this comprehensive substance use plan? So the way we work is to advise the governor and advise the state legislature on the best use of state dollars with respect to supporting our plan. The other piece of funding that we get is around community engagement and staffing for each of the plan's elements. So this slide shows how we divide up our work. We are divided up by kind of the continuum of care. We also have, and I mentioned this for my small group, so you're hearing this a second time. We have seen the need, both through our legislative work, but also in our partnership with organizations like YDO and the System of Care Advisory Council, to really support the youth system of care as much as possible as it relates to substance use disorder. We'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. I won't get ahead of it. But that availability of staffing to support each one of these pieces of the continuum and have agency liaison roles helps us to reimagine how state agencies spend their money, as well as get a good pulse of what's missing and what we should be asking the legislature for. So a good example is recovery schools. We work with the Oregon Department of Education and the development of their programming, and then where they hit big gaps. So, for instance, this last legislative cycle, we did not achieve some of their legislative objectives about expanding the schools. we were working with the legislature and the governor to identify that as a need. And so that's kind of how we operate as a policy commission, not so much as a programmatic body. Okay, so here's the timeline. Oh, Anna's here too. And Anna, hey Anna. So I'm gonna get into our partnership in a minute, but I just want to say, especially as it relates to youth, we work hand in hand with the System of Care Advisory Council. All of our work is done in tandem with the relation to substance use and co-occurring disorders. And so you'll hear a bit about what we're doing with SOCAC, and then in Anna's presentation, I'm sure you'll hear the kind of the flip side of that from the SOCAC lens. So this is our comprehensive plan timeline. We started back in September, and we are now wrapping up and putting out publicly available information on our plan. I'll share that plan link with you. It's at the bottom of this presentation, but we just got everything published yesterday, so it's amazing. And so you are going to be kind of some of the first eyes to see it in its real written form. Um, uh, we spent a lot of the summer going through multiple rounds of community engagement. So we started some community engagement up front. We did community engagement about halfway through the plan. And then we did a round of community engagement afterwards that we did a statewide roadshow in which we went to cities across Oregon and said, here's what you told us, here's what we did. What do you think? And do you want to help us implement this thing? And so I think that's really what the last year has happened. Along that, the committees are constantly learning. It's like this iterative process. So we have these subcommittees that are staffing each of our commissioners and people from the public who are staffing each part of the continuum of care. They are taking what we learn from these community engagement, and then they're either asking more questions or implementing those things into their plan. So it was a very iterative process over the last year. We have our theme for this plan is opening doors, achieving access, belonging, and connection. We use a framework called the recovery-oriented system of care, which means we are working towards basically a system that is recovery friendly. And I think it's really important. And I forgot to do this, y'all. I told Brian and I told Brian and Court I'd do this to define recovery. We have a definition of recovery here in a minute. I will post that in the chat. But I think it's a really helpful way to kind of ground us in supporting lifelong connection and wellness. So not just thinking about recovery as an AA meeting or a recovery group, but thinking about recovery everywhere. And in in that also for young people, thinking about the flip side of that is what makes for a good recovery system also makes for a good prevention system in a lot of ways. So thinking about those two sides of the coin. Our big three are to reduce prevalence of substance use disorders, reduce substance use related deaths, and reduce substance use related disparities and inequities. Everything in this plan falls under those objectives. Here's just a little bit about our community engagement. We did it, it went January through June was kind of the first iteration. We had grants to community-based organizations who drove a lot of this work. We also had work in carceral settings, working with youth both at OYA, or youth and adults at OYA and at DOC. We had formal consultation with the tribes, and then we worked with different peer recovery organizations, folks who use drugs, harm reductionists, really tried to expand every kind of thought or perspective that we could with the amount of funding that we had to do community engagement and pay people for their perspectives. And then, like I said, we just did this roadshow to kind of wrap that up. So this gets us to our partnership with SOCAC, which I think is really important for the youth work. So in 2024, and I'm grateful even before that, and or earlier than when we got the legislation, Anna and my director, Annalise Stoff, had already been talking about how do we, um, well, let me back up a second. And I think this is important for this group, and I think it's important for what Brian had kind of touched on this earlier, and I think is really important. These commissions and councils, the three, the YDO, ADPC, and SOCAC in particular, play this very important role in state government that I don't think is quite appreciated always, is that we're glue people. Like you as a council, like I think about this all the time, is like we keep it all together in a lot of ways while also trying to construct bridges and pathways between these very disparate systems that do not work well together, and they weren't designed to work well together. I think that's important at a state agency level, but it's also important, especially as we go in, and we talked a little bit about this in our smaller groups, as we go into this time of very lean times for state budgets, how we show up for community, and how we show up in local contexts as subject matter experts who can navigate these really bureaucratic systems, and then provide our best estimate or best understanding of what's happening, along with the best practice that we know from our state, other states elsewhere in the country. So I think that's really important. And I think, especially as it came to the youth system of care with respect to substance use disorder, the directors at ADPC and SOCAC recognized that early as we both have this opportunity with comprehensive planning to come together. 4002 put that into motion very concretely. It's like, y'all need to work on youth substance use disorder. So we formed a joint youth-led committee called the Oregon Youth Addiction Alliance. We go by "Oh yeah," like the Kool-Aid Man. That's how we present ourselves in public. It is 9 young people from across the state, all with lived experience of substance use disorder or criminal justice system involvement due to substances, and the family members, and then commissioners from the ADPC. That group of people has been getting together for about a year to kind of to produce the youth portion of this plan, as well as to influence the other pieces of the system of care so that they are all aligned. And so today I'm going to go over what we got to, and then we're going to have time to talk about it. So I'm going to jump in as quickly as possible. This is here for you. It's just a high level of our priorities throughout the plan, and a lot with respect to the adult system of care. You will have these slides, I think, right, Melissa? So I'll just leave this here for you.
Yes, thank you, Wes.
Here is some of the things that we heard back from young people, both in the Oh Yeah, and then also as we did community engagement, is that youth feel alienated by adult-centric systems that rely on punitive responses. I think everybody here would understand that. What works? Voluntary, peer-led, culturally affirming programs and safe, trusted spaces. Schools play a super vital role. Young people also understand the limitations of schools, that they are saddled with a lot of society's issues that they need to address, and then not financed to do that. So striking a balance of using schools as a community space. And research shows that 90% of young people with a substance use disorder still go to public school. And so really understanding how do we create recovery-oriented preventative spaces for young people. And then expanding youth-centered programs and spaces outside of school. So this is the thing of like third spaces. Where do youth spend their time when they're not at school or another institution? Maybe it could be a behavioral health institution, and they're not at home. Where are those spaces of connection? Okay, so that gets us to our strategies. So the first is really, and you'll see that these are very setting specific. I color coded these because I like to color code my notes, and I think I'm just gonna voice that upon you all, is that the green is where I'm seeing a lot of overlap with YDO's programming. and where I've spent a lot of time with Brian and Cord trying to think about how we align our work so that we can carry out some of these plan objectives in a way that makes sense for your grantees and also for the objectives of the ADPC. Orange is the shared uh, priorities, so the top priorities for SOCAC and ADPC. So these are the ones that we have presented to the governor that are based on SOCAC and all of SOCAC is involvement and ADPC coming together and saying, if we have to do three things, these are the three things we're going to do. And you will see there's one that kind of crosswalks both. So the first is around schools. So one thing is to expand recovery. Sorry, I'll start from the top. Design a comprehensive regional school early intervention, treatment, and recovery program. So what does that mean? There are several schools across Oregon who are doing extremely cool work with respect to screening and providing supports for young people while they're at school related to substance use, but generally those screenings are attending to a bunch of things: suicide prevention, caring adults, and really working with a multi-tiered systems of support framework to identify youth, what they need, how they need it. Implementing substance use into that, there has been a lot of success. And so what our folks are saying is really how do we build out and support, especially when it comes to substance use disorder. So if you have a tier 3 kid who's really struggling with substances, what do we do next? And so we have started that program. We have awarded 2 grantees already to start that pilot site, these pilot sites, and we're going to move that way to really kind of create comprehensive support services. The second is to expand recovery schools. Recovery schools are education programs for youth who are in recovery. They often have the K-12 education. These are generally high schools in Oregon, but they vary in other parts of the country. But the model is to provide K-12 education services, but also wrap around with recovery supports in a safe and caring environment. We have 3 in Oregon. We're supposed to have 9 over time. We are behind in that process, and so a lot of this is working to support that and get that out. Third spaces, I think this is really important for you all. So working with community-based organizations to provide recovery supports. I think that's the kind of the too long didn't read of this. One of the things that I think was interesting in this morning's conversation is how do we take some of the information that y'all are collecting and move, especially in the data conversations, and move some of these to support the outcomes that you all are looking for. One of the things I've talked to Brian and Cord and Bill, who has been kind of the liaison for YDO to the OYA, is how do we start to analyze the grant reporting and the grant plans that you have to inform where we can start looking at recovery adjacent programming and then playing matchmaker with other systems of funding to support recovery. And so that's one of the highlight of the work plan that we're developing with YDO is this cross collaboration of playing matchmaker in a lot of ways, but also how do we design a system that recognizes the needs of y'all's grantees and then doesn't have to add a whole bunch of reporting burden on them. And so wanted to put that out there. The fourth is around home. Expanding in-home treatment is really important. So we have a lot of evidence base to suggest that getting teams of people to support people in their home is good for a lot of different reasons. One, for access, but 2, keeping families together. Substance use is often a multi-generational disease. How do we explore the issues in a home to support them? I'm not going to go into 5 and 6, but those are really kind of targeted, same idea, but targeted to the child welfare population and supporting child welfare programming to have addiction and recovery programs within their current service base. Carceral, so expanding and improving treatment recovery and training certification offering at Oregon Youth Authority and at DOC for young people. Number 8 is a shared priority with SOCAC, but also something that we've talked a lot about with YDO is how do we support local county juvenile departments to provide diversion programs and direct SUD and co-occurring supports? Something I've talked to Molly about, Molly Rogers, a lot about over time is how do we use these funding mechanisms to support them in a lot of the diversion work that they do, but also to build in-house supports in some way. And so, similarly to kind of the youth competitive grants, thinking about how to do this within the context of the juvenile crime prevention grants and the Title II grants. So that's what we're thinking about in these first couple of years is how do we assess all the data that you collect and then build our programming around that. And for OHA or for whoever to come along and take that up or provide more funding for YDO to amplify those things. I'm gonna skip the treatment one. And then 10 and 11 are about community-based prevention. So this was done in our prevention committee, but echoed a lot of the sentiments that we got from Oh Yeah, is strengthening our regulatory approach through House Bill 3321, which defined for the first time primary prevention for substance use disorder, going out and finding out where all the money is. Where is the money coming at a state and federal level that is being pumped into communities? How do we braid that together and or use those? Are those monies being spent well? And then also, how do we braid those monies together to support programming? And I know this is happening with YDO grantees because we talk to them. They are doing primary prevention work. It might not be said that they're doing primary prevention work, and they might not necessarily be getting paid to do that. How do we assess that and make sure that that happens? And we're doing that matchmaking. And then finally, increase engagement of youth serving and allied organizations in primary prevention activities at community level in order to delay any youth use of substances through education and pro-social activities. So this is to Sally's point earlier. We are going to be taking a much more think tanky role in a lot of ways when financing is dry. So we're going to work with communities to support them with their own data and our own understanding of this state bureaucracy to do a lot of the heavy lifting if they want us to kind of match all these things together. So the schools are a really big opportunity there. We also have local alcohol and drug policy commissions that no one seems to talk about, but they're in statute. And it's a lot of these partners who are sitting at a table and saying, how do we deal with fentanyl and young people and messaging that to young people? We want to come and help them support and say, oh, did you know that you have a YDO grantee down the street? Like, do you know like that this work is happening? Really supporting folks to kind of break down those barriers. Ooh, okay. That leads us to our discussion, and I think I'm still on time, I think. So we wanted to talk about from this roundtable discussion is like what you've heard. How does your work within YDO intersect align with a comprehensive plan? Do the strategies highlighted above feel like the right points of collaboration? Were there things that you read on that list that you're like, oh, we need to be more involved in that? Happy to have that conversation. Uh, and then this point of outcomes, we're still defining that, and I think it sounds like y'all are doing some of the work to like look through these data systems and start to define that for yourselves. Do you see these shared goals? Should we have some shared outcomes? Like, is that something that Brian and Cord and I should talk about more as we move forward in this work? So I'll leave it there. And also, if there are any questions about the plan in general.
Hi, Wes. Daniela Avila. I'm part of the council. So I really appreciated this. This is the first time I've seen all of this information with the amount of clarity. So thank you. One thing that just jumps out to me is I have a curiosity specifically around the schools because I help support practitioners right on the ground. I do have a direct connection in my region and in the region south of me. And it was just the other day where this conversation came up, and just thinking about, like you say, the tightening of resources, and everybody, this is a high priority for many organizations right now. And so to be thinking about, if there are 3 schools currently and 9 schools kind of on the docket, are there spaces where there's a lot of energy around standing up some of the new schools? It would be helpful for some of us to maybe be in the loop about what that looks like, so that we can be planning and aligning rather than standing up programming like this in our region. So just food, that's a curiosity for me.
It's a great question. I think that's one of the things that we're hoping to be, is kind of like a clearinghouse of like who's doing what, you know? And I think that involves these kind of interagency conversations. The recovery schools is a very specific model, right? There are very specific standards. ODA has a very specific guidance on what those are. Now with the kind of broader early intervention, and I would say primary prevention, because we're doing a lot of work to define what that is, early intervention and substance use support services, that's still being defined. And I think we've done a mapping so far of what we know. On the primary prevention side, we've got money for a contractor to further understand that. And we're going to have a database of it. And so you will be able to see, oh, this exists in my community, or it doesn't. And I think some of that will help to build some of these partnership conversations that you're talking about. I think the other thing is, what we want for all these committees and commissions to know is our staff. This is what I said earlier about getting paid as a person to just sit here and think about this all day, is I want you to be able to call me and say, hey, here are the schools that are kind of toying around with this. Is there another effort that's happening in my community? And I can join y'all together. We've done that in multiple instances. And so I think, especially with the schools, it's hard because they're being bombarded with a bunch of things. To think to like call the district next door is not always the first, especially if you cross over ESD lines potentially, or regions. Like it doesn't always, it's not always the first thought. So happy to serve in that role, but also there are going to be some resources coming that would help you in that.
Thank you.
Zan.
Thank you for the presentation. This has been really good to hear. I sat in on some of those Measure 110 conversations when I was still a commissioner, and was very frustrated about the complete ignorance of most folks around the table of even the existence of the Youth Development Oregon. And so I'm glad that we're now more of a partner, and hope that we can work together much more closely. And I look forward to hearing more about how we here at the council and with Youth Development Division can help to achieve some of those primary prevention outcomes, or continue to do the good work that we're doing that have the effect of primary prevention. I don't think any of us around the table want to completely change the feel of the work that we do, but having more clarity about what some of those outcomes are for us is great. So, and I love the third spaces. We need so many more of those. So just the consciousness that that's such a valuable resource is a good one. I guess I don't have a question.
I appreciate the sentiment. Yeah, I think our young people, I think the three things that they named are all represented at this table, right? It's, we need to talk about schools, we need to talk about carceral settings, and we need to talk about third spaces. I mean, I think that is where we led, and where they led us. And then I think as those conversations came, they were like, "Oh, we need to talk about home, and we need to talk about the actual treatment facilities." The treatment facilities were last because those aren't fun or necessarily the most accessible for young people in the state. So it is really important point, Zan, of like, these third spaces are really, really valuable to young people, and like, how do we give them the tools uh to maximize their support level? And I'm just putting our recovery definitions because I promised I would, and then I messed up, and I'm upholding my promise.
We'll just jump in to say we've got on the agenda, we have about 5 more minutes available if folks have any more questions. Um, I mean, something that's every time I get information from APC, I feel like I hear new things or think new things about it. And I think we a lot of our focus or my focus has been on like how we as agencies understand this stuff and then how like providers understand this stuff. But yeah, I wondered, Wes, if you could share like just something I think is really exemplary is the Oh Yeah group, which I've not yet attended one of the meetings, but Bill, who's not here today, has been an attendee. And that means really just being a fly on the wall. It is really a youth-led, youth-run meeting. And I'm wondering if you could just share, Wes, just your experience with the youth who make up that group and just like some of the things that you hear from them in terms of their perception of this work. Um, because I think about like, as like our grantees in a way are our customers, that we work with organizations that are then working with young people. But and we seek to have more and more direct relationship with youth to get that voice and that guidance from them. And so I don't know if you have any thoughts just to share about, oh yeah, because I think that's something else that folks here might be excited to know about is that you've got a really active youth leadership body as part of your work.
Yeah, I think I'll approach that question, and I'd love to hear what Anna has to say about this. I think we set a space where we wanted people to live with their lived experience first. And so I think folks who are in recovery in general, there is a service element to that. And so building a space where you can utilize that service element is really important for young people, especially young people who are too young to enter the workforce in a lot of ways. So building a space where they can use their lived experience of these systems to inform policy. And when we say policy, I mean actual policy. So I think it is really important. I heard a lot of conversation around youth-led development, youth grant development. Excuse me, I can't speak. I think that is a valuable process because their lived experience would be supporting the design of programming or the design of future policy for YDO or for ADPC or for whoever. The the actual the actual thing has to be tangible, right? It's got to be tangible, something that they can see and something they feel that they use their time to do. I think the other thing that I said this in my little small group, I've been doing youth engagement my entire career in Oregon, but in the last 5 years, it's been actually part of my job is like, um, really having, an understanding that one, staffing for this is really hard. It is super hard because you're not only navigating the system as we as adults have to navigate, so this like bureaucracy navigation, but having to also support the young people to navigate it through their own experience. So it's really hard and it has to be staffed and like staffed appropriately. It sounds like y'all are hiring someone to do that full time, and then y'all have had folks who've done that over time. YDO is always an example I give that there are great people doing this work already. And like we need to learn from their experience to better develop out youth engagement work. I think it's a recognition though that like we as state agencies need to really we need to put our money where our mouth is. We need to put the resources to do it well. And I think those two things working in tandem, leading allowing the youth to lead with their lived experience, one, two, staffing it appropriately so that lived experience can like shine through in actual tangible output. I think that's really important. I don't know if did that answer your question?
It did. My question was sort of evolving as I was saying it, so that was a perfect answer. I saw something in the chat too. Trying to scroll down here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Gord,
Sam asked, oh, go ahead, Brian.
I just tried to offer an answer. So I wrote it because I know we don't have enough much more time, but I also saw another hand. Whose hand was up with a question? I thought maybe it went down.
Hey, Brian, Sam had his hand up, but
Was it Sam? Maybe Sam asked it in the chat. Sam. Okay. So I try to answer, and you all can read. Yeah, not necessarily new funding, but maybe we can think about focusing dollars in a different way. And important to note are some of our grantees, some of county juvenile programs, tribal programs have a lot of prevention and intervention work, and some more specifically around substance use disorder.
Yeah. And I think that's our job. I think that's Sam, I think you're hitting on what our job is for the next 2 years, is to figure out where those intersections are. And then, like I said, it's like trying to plug in whether it's how do we align more with grant language in the future or grant TA in the future, is probably more likely. And then also how do we make sure that those organizations who are doing the work but not getting paid to do it, like how do we get them those financing? How do we match make them with those financing and then build those partners locally, which tends to help with one and two.
Well, Wes, we really appreciate you sharing this. I think that there is more to come here. I mean, I think just like the awareness of this, I mean, from the conversation that you and Brian and I had a couple of weeks ago, and maybe this is also another answer for Sam's question, is I think we have an opportunity to learn more about how our grantees are encountering this need. I mean, I think I think a first step is just like understanding one, who's doing this kind of work already as part of what they offer, whether with our grant money or other funds, and two, like who sees it as an unmet need. And then I think we kind of learn more in order to sort of build more support in what we do. Um, so this has been, I think, really great table setting for that. Um, we've got on the agenda, we've got next similar presentation from Anna Williams from the System of Care Advisory Council, slated for 1:45. So we had set some time to give ourselves, I think, both buffer, but also a short break just to kind of sort of clear your RAM and then come back fresh. So I think that's something we can go ahead and keep with just to give folks a second to stretch. And if everybody wants to take about 7 minutes, we'll start into the next presentation at 1:45. See you soon. uh, thanks for that terrific presentation. Um, and thanks for sticking around for the next one as well. And actually for coming early. I hope that it was time well spent to kind of get to be part of our breakouts and whatnot.
Thank you for letting me crash. I'm so happy to come. It was great.
Awesome. Well, folks are filing back in here. I'll just kind of say quickly, just for I think just about everyone here right now was here yesterday, but something that I didn't mention at the top of these two presentations is that as with a lot of the stuff we've done in this retreat, both of these presentations actually connect back to our strategic plan. We have a strategy, which I I swear I put this. So I just have like the strategy, the number of the strategy in front of me, unfortunately. It's strategy for Project 23. Um, this was actually one of our priority projects, which was to engage with partner agencies such as ADPC and SOCAC to design an alignment strategy, identify how our grantees can access resources and services to meet their needs, to meet the needs of youth experiencing homelessness, behavioral mental health needs, foster care, justice system, and substance abuse disorder or substance use. Um, there's a phrase that you shared, Wes, that I thought was a bit nicer. Um, uh, that the Oh Yeah had coined around this. But suffice to say that the goal of trying to strengthen our alignment with our partners is something we're really trying to initiate with these presentations. So, um, Brian, if I might, can I ask you to provide an introduction to our next presenter?
Yes, I'll keep it quick because I don't think y'all really want to hear from me. And I imagine many of you have met or heard of the System of Care Advisory Council and its executive director, Anna Williams. Anna's somewhere on this screen. I'm trying to find
I'm
maybe.
here. I
I know
might
you're
pop to the
there.
top if I say it.
Oh, like if you speak, you'll show up at the top.
Yeah,
Okay.
usually.
I don't know. There you are. I found you. Um, so I've had the pleasure of sitting in on several SOCAC, System of Care Advisory Council meetings and work group meetings. And Anna is a former state legislator, and has done, I'm sure, many other things, but has a view on issues in her area where she lives personally, but also takes a statewide view in the work and has, I think, just is a really important partner of ours, and we've found some ways already to form to align. So this is already in process. These presentations are a way to um, maybe shed a little bit more light on that for our council members, and also for us to kind of elevate, right, to take stuff um, to some new heights. So just excited to have Anna. I know her team also, Christy and others. I'm going to forget all the names of the people on the SOCAC team, but they're doing great work. And so it's a real pleasure to have you, Anna. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Is it okay if I share my own slides? Yeah, all right. So can you see slides that say SOCAC, which is a name I'm hoping to change in the not too distant future because it kind of sounds like you're coughing up a hairball when you say it. So we are the System of Care Advisory Council, and I am their executive director. I use she, her pronouns. So I'm going to start sort of very high level. What even is system of care? I think it's a phrase you hear a lot and it means a couple of different things. And so we're starting all the way at like, what do I even mean when I say that? It is a philosophy, sort of a strategy that's recognized at the national level of cross-system coordination that really focuses on youth and family engagement in their own care, sort of at every level, right? So when somebody is experiencing services, they're partnering with what services they need, identifying how that works for them, timing and things like that. But they're also partnering to what Wes said earlier about how are things funded? What are the policies and processes that exist to either facilitate access to my care or not? And how am I a partner in determining what is actually working at the agency level and at the state policy level? So that is some of the work that we do. We really focus on youth and families who have complex and significant behavioral and mental health needs, and then cross-system support needs, right? So children who are using the intellectual or developmental disability system or other disability supports, children with IEPs or 504s in the public school system, children with complex healthcare conditions that also have mental health or substance use concerns, right? So that sort of special healthcare needs population is the focus of our system of care. System of care also is a set of values that is youth focused, family centered. It is prioritizing community care over institutional care wherever possible. It is meeting the crisis identified by the youth or the family instead of the system saying like, well, you're saying it's a crisis, but we don't agree. So it's really trying to meet youth and families where they are and meet their service needs on the ground. Then it is also an organizational structure, which we are, and we have regional partners across the state to try to address and resolve barriers to access to care across systems. So the goal of all of these different types of system of care, which when somebody says that in general, what we're trying to do is create a continuum of effective services and supports that are youth and family driven, community-based, and culturally and linguistically responsive. We are also data driven to the best of our ability, and that includes qualitative data, which can be a little bit of a challenge at times. And for the System of Care Advisory Council at the state level, our priority focus is on children and youth who are involved in 3 or more state-funded systems. So county juvenile, Oregon Youth Authority, child welfare, IDD, those types of state-funded systems. And then there's a link here on this slide to our data dashboard that gives a ton of information about where kids are getting services, what types of kids are getting services. It is only for kids who are receiving Medicaid funded services at this time. We don't have access to private pay. So when we sort of show an image of what we're talking about, right, we're putting children, youth, and their families at the center of the circle, and we're in lowercase wraparound, right? We're wrapping all of these service systems around them and trying to make sure that youth and families have their needs met. We also partner with Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes, and many of them prefer to call it a circle of care rather than a system of care. So just sort of honoring that preference on this slide. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I do this presentation a lot, and so I talk really fast. So if I'm going too fast or if I'm saying words you don't mean, that's not a dumb question, and somebody else is probably wondering the same thing. So put it in the chat or just interrupt me, whatever works for you. So in 2019, Senate Bill 1 was passed that established the council, and the primary duty that was established in legislative intent was to develop and maintain a comprehensive long-range plan for a coordinated system of care that encompasses public health, health systems. Oh, sorry. Whoops. Public health, health systems, and that means behavioral health. The behavioral health division at OHA, the way they write laws is often confusing. Child welfare, the education system, juvenile justice, and services and supports for mental and behavioral health and people with intellectual or developmental disabilities. That can be community-based services through nonprofits. It can be informal supports and services through a church or an after-school program or a neighbor. We sort of have this massive breadth of it's all our problem. Currently, we are almost done writing our new strategic plan, which will cover the years 2026 through 2029. In December, we'll have 2 more council meetings where we sort of dig into the public feedback that we've gotten on the plan and incorporate it, and then finalize the plan on December 16th for shipping it off to the legislature and the governor's office and our partner agencies. YDO is indicated in there in a couple of places. So we'll be talking to you like Wes recently did about like, here's what we've named for your work. Is that reasonable? Can you do that? How do you want to partner with us on it? We have 4 goals, which are to improve access to coordinated, integrated, and community-based systems of care, to promote the co-creation of equitable policies and systems by providers and the youth and families they serve, to create sustainable infrastructure that increases the system of care's capacity and credibility, And when we say system of care in that space, we mean the systems that provide services and supports to kids, not like we're trying to build ourselves up here, though there is some internal work we have to do to make that functional. And then the big goal that I think so many of us come to the table for is to transition the system, transform the systems that serve children, youth, and families into systems that really meet needs and are human-centered rather than system-centered in how we deliver care. So again, I'll say it because it has been a sort of source of confusion for a lot of people. Our priority focus at the SOCAC is on youth with the highest needs. We feel like if we remove barriers for the 100 most difficult to serve kids in Oregon, we've removed barriers that are in front of so many other kids as well, that we will really be using a margin to center strategy to really improve access for all. We are informed by the available data, and we recognize that the available data often doesn't answer the questions that people have about the system and how it's working. And so we also are trying to push and pull into how can we gather more effective data to answer those hard questions like outcomes? Is it working? So what if we have more people in a service? Are they better after they experience that service? That's a much harder question to answer. Parsa?
Yeah, thank you so much, Anna. I think this has been really helpful for me because I feel like I've learned about SOCAC's different scopes of work in several different spaces, but this has been really helpful to pull it all together. A wondering for me is sort of thinking about a multi-tiered system of support approach, right? Is my understanding on track where are you looking and really targeting like that tier 3 level of support, the most intensive, and then coordinating with partners on like tier 2, tier 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. And I have an image of that. It's not in here, but it might be really helpful just for some people who like are visual learners to see that triangle. I'll pull that up. And then, as you know, we collaborate with Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission because their work is focused on substance use and our work is focused on youth. And there wasn't really anyone whose sole focus was youth with substance use or impacted by substance use. And so that is the work of the Oh Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well, but I know Wes covered that pretty well. So here is that visual that I was just referring to. So the state level council is really focusing on this tier 3 level right now, centralized access to intensive services, therapeutic foster care, residential treatment, hospitalization when necessary, behavioral rehabilitation, right? Our regional networks are focused more at the tier 2 level on the interagency care coordination, serving youth with intermediate acuity, right? That is a regional approach. Those are our regional capacities, right? But when you get into that really highest acuity space, that is the state's responsibility. We don't have the economy of scale to have high acuity services in every community across the state. And thank goodness that we don't need that in every community across the state. And then this tier 1 universal upstream strategies, we do have some of that, but primarily we rely on our partners across the state who are really focused on early learning, home visiting, access to food, stable housing. Like we recognize that those are the foundation upon which we build ourselves and that there are a lot of other people doing really great work in that space. So that is not our mandate. Does that help you, Parsa, kind of put it into context?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the visual is really valuable for me. And I was just thinking, I made a note to myself, I'd love a copy of it too.
Yeah,
Just
happy to send it to you.
Yeah,
I think
thank
the only
you.
other thing I'll name here is you'll see legal system and child welfare as orange in these sort of this web of services that we've tried to build around our children and youth. And they're in different color only because they're not consensual services. And so we wanted to kind of set them aside from services someone might choose to involve themselves with, as opposed to systems that they sort of are forced into. Back to the other document. So we have some key indicators here. These are going to stay stable over the course of the 4 years. They're really trying to look across the system at if things are getting better, we should see improvements in these measures, right? So they were chosen because they will require multiple systems to better align and integrate in order to see these outcomes. So we'll see more youth saying they have a safe person or place outside of school. We'll see fewer youth saying they have an unmet mental health care need in the student health survey. We'll see a decrease of youth identifying as having a substance use disorder, and we've talked a lot about this with Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission. We expect to see some of these measures increase at first because the first thing you see when you're doing a good job at reducing stigma is an uptick in your rates. Right, so if we are reducing stigma around kids coming forth and saying, I'm struggling with a substance use disorder, we're going to see a spike, and that's actually a positive thing. Um, the next thing we need to see is a decrease of that number, and that's where the work really starts. We want to increase the number of youth receiving home and community-based services, and we mean that not in a Medicaid sense, but in a does the service happen at your house or in your community. We want to decrease the number of youth who get stuck in an emergency room because there isn't a right place for them to go after that. We want to increase the number of system-involved youth who complete high school within 5 years. And we're choosing that number. I think YDO is probably aware of why we picked that number instead of 4-year graduation rate or something like that. But we want to hold space for kids who do struggle and recognize the accomplishment that completing school really is for them instead of just cutting them out of the measurement. We want to reduce the rate of suicide attempts, and we have an equity strategy in there that we really want to be looking at that as a disaggregated number because if you look at Oregon suicide rate, it looks pretty good until you start disaggregating and you see that white kids are attempting and completing suicide less, but kids of color are continuing to increase in their rates of attempts. So we've got real work to do there around equity. We want to decrease involvement in those systems that were identified as orange on that visual I just showed you. And we want to increase the number of families who report a well-functioning system of care in the state of Oregon. Those we will be reporting on an annual basis in a public report. And then we have process measures for each of our goals, and these are some examples. This is sort of the how measures, and these will probably change over time. This is like if we're doing our work well, we will see that the work is happening because we'll see peer support registries go, number of people registered as peer supports go up. We'll see the number of local systems of care implementing a family-driven approach increase, right? So these are just examples of ways that we'll be able to tell if we're actually doing the things that our plan is telling us to do, not necessarily if they're having the impact on community that we're hoping it does. So I mentioned our local systems of care. There is one in every region of the state. They are required in the CCO contract. So there are 13, I think, different they've kind of combined and merged in some places. So some CCOs contracted out to one nonprofit that serves maybe 3 or 4 counties. Eastern Oregon has one giant system of care that covers those 13 counties that EOCCO oversees. So it's not every county. And they convene local system partners from the behavioral health, child welfare, intellectual and developmental disability, juvenile justice, and education systems. They strive to center youth and family voice. We do a lot of technical assistance for them on how to do that. They're not very well staffed. So to Wes's point earlier, if you want to do it well, you have to resource it. And that is a constant challenge at the local level. They're contractually obligated to address barriers to services and supports and report that to the Oregon Health Authority. And so we then try to kind of pick that up and run with it. There's a little bit of a mismatch between we don't oversee them, but we try to partner really closely with them. And we give non-competitive grants to each of those regions, each of Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes, and the federally qualified Indian Health Center in Portland that provides services to youth to help them sort of fund the work that they're trying to do and hopefully align with our strategic plan. And they do a lot of local policy advocacy. And when they can't solve that problem at the local, if it's not a local or regional policy and they need to push it up to us because it's a state level policy, then we have a little process for that. Current major projects are strategic planning, so close to done on that. We just actually last week wrapped up our Youth Behavioral Health Workforce Subcommittee that was mandated to us via House Bill 4151. So we were looking at how to increase bachelor's level and below certified behavioral health workers and how to improve access to care and equity within care, right? How do you make the workforce look more like the youth who they're serving, understand from a philosophical standpoint better the youth that they're serving, right? When you look at Oregon's behavioral health workforce, it is primarily white middle class women. And we're wonderful, but we don't understand what everybody in the state is going through. And sometimes it's really nice to not have to explain your cultural context to somebody before they can understand why something matters to you. Um, and so, as we're sort of reflecting on the work that we've done, we're going to be rebuilding our committee's structure and reformatting a number of our internal policies to really make sure that we can do the work that the strategic plan tells us to do. And then, we had some conversations about lived experience and how to engage it. This is from some of the youth engagement work that we did about what they hope to see from us as we continue to build our work and improve access for youth in policymaking. So, youth in that focus group mentioned that they hope that in the future, youth will be able, allowed, and encouraged to speak up for themselves and their needs and never go without, regardless of who or what they are. I hope that youth are able to get the services they need and that there are no closed doors or red tape. And then this youth said they want youth to be empowered to fight for their needs, but don't always need to, consciously including equitable access to care as a minimum standard. A couple of key connections that our council has to yours. One of those incredible humans is Annette Magicotami. She is our co-chair, and she has been involved in your juvenile detention, I think, education guidelines that I think was actually on this agenda earlier today, maybe. Um, She's one of the founding mothers of the System of Care Advisory Council and has really set the stage for the way that we advocate for youth involved in carceral experiences in the juvenile legal system. And she also helped us partner with the Department of Human Services and the Multnomah County Juvenile Justice Division to create the Sankofa program, which takes the wraparound model and applies it to youth who are at risk of juvenile legal involvement instead of qualifying them via a mental health diagnosis, and has been like wildly and incredibly successful. So developing a very cool, promising practice that we're trying to gather the evidence for to eventually get it into the Title 4E clearinghouse so that there would be federal funding available. We, as staff and many of our members, really do enjoy attending your convenings and participating in grant review opportunities with you. We learn a lot every time any of our members attend any of your events. So we've really appreciated that cross-pollination that happens when we have our folks able to attend your events. And yeah, we just really enjoy continuing to collaborate with you and look forward to even more. And then I think I have the same questions that Wes had at the end of his slideshow, which is where do you see alignment? What activities would you like to partner on? And where do you sort of see shared outcomes or goals? Do you have recommendations for how we measure real impact instead of just counting widgets and services? Love to hear that. And is there ways to sort of share measures so that we're not duplicating efforts, but we're really just gathering the same information and sharing that across the board? Feel free to respond. I think that's the end of the slide deck. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for the clapping hands, Brian. Parsa.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I also really appreciate the questions at the end as well. And at our first day of the retreat, Nate Latanzio, one of our council members, gave a presentation on youth engagement and youth voice. And I was reflecting on the quotes that you shared at the end of your presentation, and I wonder perhaps there are ways in which we can look at the qualitative data and thinking about the experiences of our young people across the different systems and programs. Perhaps that's another area of more alignment because as a council, one of our discussions was thinking about where do we ask our grantees, for example, to share some of the youth voice data they collect to show the impact of their programming and reach. And then how do we help support our grantees in sort of moving along the youth voice, youth engagement spectrum too? And doing that thoughtfully with capacity and support, without being overly burdensome either.
You're
So just
smiling, so I'm like,
offering
oh,
that.
I know what that challenge feels like.
Exactly. It's like finding that right balance. And I understand that's an iterative process, for SOCAC. We're learning a lot as well. We're learning a lot from our partners. So really appreciate that additional information at the end.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. I think, the question of how do you do good youth engagement work? We are just starting a new contract and we went to the National System of Care Summit. We took almost all of our staff and all four of the members of the council who have lived experience. Nope, one couldn't come at the end. Three of our members of the council who are really here repping lived experience in our space. We all went to DC. We went to this conference. First of all, I will say system of care is like the fundamental core model is youth and families are partners at every stage of the process. And we were the only people that brought youth and family to the conference. So that struck me as like a little odd. People were like, oh my God, you brought people with lived experience. And we were like, yeah, we thought we were supposed to. We thought we meant it when we said they're part of everything we do. Um, and so we were talking about what does that look like, and with a lot of national experts of how do we do good support, and we came up with this idea to contract with people who do peer support in our meetings, before our meetings, after our meetings, and also have access to a clinician on staff. Because when you're walking into these spaces, and you probably all know this, to talk about your own lived experience, and you're talking about it to people who are professionals and people who are system builders and system leaders. Those people who are paid to do this work every day sometimes use words that don't mean anything to you, sometimes make you feel like you haven't been heard or like your painful experience doesn't really matter, right? We have youth who talk about like having to put their armor on before coming into the space, not because anybody has negative intentions, but just because people will be like, "Really? I don't think that that was what your experience was." And they're like, really? That was my experience." And so figuring out how to support them pre, post, and during, and then also when necessary, right? Lots of them are still living this experience. So connecting them to the appropriate clinical supports that don't come from staff, right? Because what we had seen that people would really rely on our staff to try to solve their clinical problems, and that's not what is appropriate for us as colleagues in the systems change work that we're here to do. And so we are just getting ready to onboard a new contractor who will really be sort of our partner in the social and clinical support work that people really have told us they need in order to do the system change work effectively. So TBD on how effective it is, but we're really excited. And when we were talking about this at the national conference, people were like, we've never even heard of such an idea. So if it works, we're doing the Oregon thing where we're the first to try it, and hopefully it's effective. Is that the end of my time? Was it 2:15 that you wanted me to be done?
No, we're just a quiet bunch this afternoon. We were very engaged yesterday in person, but it's a little harder online, and I think our energy is not quite as up there. I have found SOCAC to be one of the most difficult groups to wrap my arms around just because of the fact that it is such a system spanning organization. Can you tell us a little bit more about what kind of resources you have? How big a staff do you have, and how how do you do your work? And so how can we work better with you?
That's a really helpful question. So we have five staff. One of them is lent to us from another organization. So technically, legally, we have four staff. Um, And we are just now pausing all of our committees, but we had 17 different committees that were doing different sort of had different focuses, right? So we have two affinity spaces, one for youth and one for family leaders. We're going to keep those. But we also then had a legislative committee, a respite work group, a workforce committee, um, a data committee, a grants committee, right? Like all of these things. And I think that's part of why it was really hard to wrap your arms around it. Like, what's my entry point and what are they doing and how does it connect to the whole? Like, you're not alone in that. And so we're taking a bit of a break. We're actually feeding our strategic plan and all of the work into it, into some AI. Don't tell the kids. Um, they seem to really hate AI. And having it make some recommendations of how could we do this in 5 committees? How could we do this in 7 committees, right? As we're watching the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission, we're like, well, they have more staff and fewer committees. Like maybe that's something we should look at. So we are continuing to advocate for more staff. We need a communications person, sort of first and foremost, to really help us be more clear about what we do and how we do it. And we're reducing the number of committees that we'll have. So that will all be coming out in the first quarter of next year. And we'll be doing sort of a like new unveiling, right? We're doing a little bit of branding work. And so we're sort of going to be reintroducing ourselves to the state of Oregon in the beginning of 2026.
Thanks. And I have one follow-up question. You mentioned, and I'm still not clear on this, the relationship with the regional systems of care. They are really more a creation of the CCO contracts and not very well connected to you all, but they have the same name. Am I hearing that right?
Yes. So every other state that has done system of care started with something that came from maybe the governor's office or a lawsuit where they sort of started top down and started with like, okay, we have a goal and then we're going to start building that goal with sort of leadership buy-in. And then we'll bring in the mid-level managers and people with lived experience and professionals in the community. We did it the other way around. So Oregon put wraparound into place in 2013, 2014, something like that. And then from those wraparound review teams built the local system of care structure that was then moved over to the CCO contract. That then they said, oh, we actually need a state coordinating body because having this many sort of regional systems without any state body, really, we just get to a place and we bump our heads against that state level wall and nothing gets done. That's why Senate Bill 1 in 2019 was passed. So then we've been since then, and we were originally actually part of OHA. You'll see our email addresses still say OHA, but we are not. We are actually a separate little unicorn. Um, and so they still live in the CCO contract. I think there might be more appropriate places for them to live instead, and we've been talking about that. But changing the CCO contract, as you all may have read in the news, has not been very easy. Even this tiny little section in the behavioral health about the systems of care has been a huge challenge. So we do technical assistance for them. We do those grants, and we use those as levers to really try to help drive behavior there, right? So our grants are things like, how are you going to use this money to align your work with our strategic plan, right? So we're trying to kind of use the levers we do have access to, even though there isn't a direct connection legally.
And I had a question that maybe picks up from that one. Something you kind of noted in an earlier slide was around your role as a coordinating body. And we've had language in our statutes that I think has evolved a little bit. But like when I started to work at YDD, the first director that I worked under, sort of like, well, we have this mandate to coordinate, but people wouldn't like listen to us. And we don't really have like a lot of leverage. And I think my question is more about like other state agencies. I mean, we've come together, we've been working together, and like with ADPC, we have some statutory obligations, but I think we also like we want to collaborate with other agencies, and we see our work as like flourishing and through collaboration. But I'm curious how you approach like with education, for example. I mean, I imagine that you have to interface sometimes with like ODE. I mean, we're inside ODE, and yet we don't like get to tell them what to do, and we don't let them tell us what to do either. But unless it's like about procurement, but it's
Yes.
I mean that's
Same.
yeah, it's a bit of a dance. But I'm curious like how you navigate trying to coordinate a system with other agencies that you don't necessarily have the ability to direct.
So that's an excellent question, and it is, I think, part of our frustration. When I was being interviewed, the big question was like, how will you navigate soft power and how will you use that to achieve the work of the council, right? So we don't have a whole lot of authority in this space in terms of I can't tell DHS to do X, Y, or Z. What I do have authority wise is I can make recommendations to their budget, and if I have any questions about the policy work that they're developing in advance of a session, they have to share the work that they're developing with us. So we can get in there and like get our fingers in stuff that I think other advisory bodies don't have that sort of access to. And then trying to think of how to say this in a politically appropriate way, but most of you who know me know that that's not my strong suit. Um, we really utilize our relationship with the governor's office to the greatest extent possible. So we ask them like, hey, we're having a hard time getting this system to partner with us. Can you tell them they have to? Right? And that is sometimes effective and sometimes not effective, but that's the sort of the stick that I have access to when the carrots don't work. I
That's
think it
helpful.
helps
Thank
I'm
you.
a former legislator because a lot of agency folks are used to me bossing them around from a different standpoint. And so, like, when they're like, oh, shoot, Anna Williams is asking for blah, blah, like, they just give it to us. I don't think you all have that resource.
Who wants to run? We'll
Yeah,
just
get one
ask
of your
you to
counselors to
ask for
run.
us.
Yeah, I'll
We'll
ask.
just
My job, I'm professionally annoying. That is my job.
Wes is shaking his head, so I think
Exactly.
interesting.
I think that's my job
And
too.
it's called
That's what I was shaking my head. Not
advocacy,
that you're
right?
professionally annoying. I feel like that's our
It's not
jobs.
annoying, it's advocacy.
It's our jobs. Our
Another
jobs are
word for it. Yeah.
our jobs are to be annoying. Like I think that's like really true. Except for the young people, like on the other side of it, to be annoying to adults. Yeah.
Love it.
Nate, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Nate Latanzio for the record. I just wanted to really just like reiterate the question that you asked us. And I mean, especially you know so much about the work that you do, given the role that you do. Well, I guess I have two questions. My first was like on the question on what activities do you think we should partner together on? I was just curious if you had any like thoughts that weren't named before that around like ways in which we could interface and help support. And then also thrown in there how you mentioned the leveraging and working with the governor's office systems not wanting to work together. I was just curious if that extended to local systems of care as well, if they could reach out to the statewide system of care to support with that as well.
Yeah, good question. So on the first one, I will pull up our spreadsheet and show you where we've actually identified YDO as a critical partner in the work, which we haven't had this conversation with Brian and Cord yet. Oh, there's none yet. Shoot, I thought we'd already identified you in a couple of them. But the work that Wes identified for you is like we're joined at the hip, right? So all of those, oh yeah, priorities that we're looking at YDO to partner on, we'll be in those rooms, or if we're not in those rooms, Wes will let us know. Right. Wes and my staff member Joylene, and Annalise Dolph and we're regularly having every conversation to make sure that we're never out of alignment where it comes to those youth priorities around substance use disorder. Another priority for us, which is not stated explicitly in the strategic plan, but if you sort of look for it in there, is to close what we call the pregnancy to prison pipeline. So the way that systemic racism and oppression changes a person's trajectory throughout the course of their life and all of the different decision points along the way, where someone may get access to better care or worse care depending on the provider's perception of their race or culture. So one of the projects we're looking at on that is what we call deadly diagnoses. So when you look at the cluster of behaviors that can be similar, can be exactly the same. For young Black boys, they're often identified as oppositional defiance disorder, and for white children, they're often identified as hyperactivity disorder or ADHD or something like that. And those two diagnoses have very different trajectories as they navigate through the systems. And so we are looking at first gathering the data on that. What do we know about that? Where are the levers that we can pull on to resolve some of that? Is it in provider training? Is it in the ways that we support people with those diagnoses at the state level, right? Like, what do we do to change that fact? We know it's a fact, right? So now what do we do with that information? So that's one of the places I could see us partnering with YDO on and really looking at how do we ensure that system involved kids are thriving, graduating from high school, right? Those are some of the places that sort of immediately pop to mind. And yes, Nate, those local systems can use us to do some advocacy at the higher levels, and some of them do, not all of them do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I will say, just to give a shout out to the work that you do, doing the youth advisory council in the area that I'm in was something that I hear consistently. I shared yesterday, and I just figured I would share with you as well, since it ties directly to you, is that just knowing that there are entities out there that are advocating for and with young people has been one of the biggest things that I've heard from young people being like shocking and like shocking in a good way of knowing like I know I'm not alone and there are folks out there that are advocating and are trying to improve these systems. And I just wanted to give a shout out to you and extend that to you the same as much as everyone else in this space because I hear it frequently.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Jeff.
Hey, Anna, thanks. I just wanted to clarify. You used a phrase I'm not familiar with, the pregnancy to prison pipeline. Am I interpreting this right? We're talking about sort of social determinants of future, meaning I could replace that with birth to prison.
You could,
This is
but
not about
prenatal
pregnant
care is
women.
also racially
Oh, yeah.
determined. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's
But
why we're
it
talking
was
about
not
it.
about pregnant women. It was not about like had nothing to do with the pregnancy itself.
No, just the system's
Got it.
responses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I just want to make sure, like, oh, is there a new thing I need to be tracking? So I appreciate it.
No, that's my own little soapbox because I'm just like, if you see the
Yeah.
way that women of color are treated by the system during their prenatal appointments and experiences, and the fact that Black women are more likely to die during the course of childbirth than like in most third world countries, like we've got real work to do.
Yeah.
It's obscene. It's like truly disgusting. And I think when we talk about just the birth to prison pipeline, sorry, I'm getting all sweaty. I get so mad about this. If you talk about just the birth to prison pipeline, you cut out that initial experience that does have a significant impact. Even if the baby and the mom survive, cognitive impacts,
Yeah.
developmental impacts, right? And so I think it's something we need to consider as we're sort of in that whole spectrum of services and concerns.
100% with you. Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not trying to convince you. I just get so worked
No,
up.
no, no. You weren't being coercive at all. You were being very thorough. I appreciate it.
I'm gonna hold this open a little longer if folks are formulating more questions before we.
Hey, Cord, this is Jeff. Again, I'm thinking back, maybe 6 years ago at a council meeting, there was this it was sort of like a presentation of sort of an organization chart of the Higher Education Coordinating Commission or ODE or somewhat where was our place in the solar system? And after today, I feel like we need a revision of that or an addition of that or there's this giant Venn diagram that's forming or multiple Venn diagrams and as we're all like each one of these councils suffers from its own form of brand awareness or just it's like some single illustration of where all these things intersect. Otherwise we run the risk of just all being kind of lumped into the same thing, but they are so unique and important.
Hey, Molly, do you want to jump in?
I do. Hi, Anna. Sorry, I missed a little bit of it because I was at another meeting that actually you were mentioned in. Uh, it's okay. Um, yes, Jeff. And we need to lay one more on the table all of a sudden, which is the Juvenile Justice Policy Commission. And I
Mhm.
was just thinking about those four, right? Now, System of Care, ADPC, Youth Development Council, and now the Juvenile Justice Commission or Council. I can't remember what we are. But all of a sudden, I'm
Policy
seeing,
Commission.
I know, all of a sudden, I'm seeing this interesting, yeah. So I'm just going to say yes, Jeff. I think that there does need to be some work on branding together separately or separately together.
Branding together separately. Yeah, we have, I'm trying to find it and I'm not succeeding. We have what we call a mind map that because we feel the same, like, oh my gosh, somebody else is working in this space and we didn't even know they existed. Like, So we're sort of trying to get our heads around all of the different bodies that are doing similar overlapping work and whether they're statewide or regional, right? Like Southern Oregon Success is doing really, really cool stuff and they're regional, right? Is there an opportunity to partner with them? I think for some of the, especially as we're walking into 2027 and or 2026 and funding decreases and HR1 impacts and all of these things, right? Finding where there are duplications and aligning those things might be one strategy that we need to really focus on so that we can continue to protect sort of a floor of what are those services and supports that need to exist, and do we need to be having seven different entities that are working on that problem rather than one where we could get some economy of scale and protect access for the people who really need the support. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be fun, but it may be necessary.
I'll wonder this out loud. I don't know if this is maybe what everyone is getting at, but like there was, it seems like it's dormant now, but there used to be the governor's education cabinet, which I think meets very infrequently, although I think still informally among the leadership of the various educational agencies. And I think Brian still meets with colleagues from the other educational entities, but it's almost like, should there be like a governor's prevention cabinet? Where, I mean, for lack of a, maybe there's another term that would be better or more inclusive. But all these agents, I mean, we're probably all talking to different advisors in the governor's office. I mean, this is actually a challenge for us because we love our education advisors. But like we just met with the workforce person. We've been trying to, we were like, hey, like we're over here doing some stuff too, you might want to know about. And we're not necessarily regularly engaging with, and I feel like within the governor's office, sometimes these channels aren't really connected. So I don't know if that's one way to think about it, but I mean, I hear so much resonance between the work that that your two agencies are doing and what we do. Um, and it feels like those things should not be in isolation from each other.
Yeah, I think we've kind of tried, like Brian and Annalise and I, like try to get together and just spend human time with one another and keep each other posted on like what's happening. And that doesn't always find the like, oh, your staff is doing this thing and my staff is doing this thing, and here's how we could better align it, right? Like I think I love those lunches, and there's probably something more strategic and structural that we need to do to make sure that we're finding those alignments and making the best of them where they exist. Maybe we need a consultant that all of us hire to figure that out for us, right?
I'm just glad you're having lunch
Hire
together.
somebody.
Like that's a huge step, Anna. I think that truly just in and of itself, I think there might be one more partner that needs to come to lunch, but
Is that JJPC?
yes. But I think but Brian's on JJPC, and so he can be that conduit. But I have seen a change and an alignment appreciation between the three entities, and so that has been awesome.
Yay, thank you.
I'll just say thanks, Anna. Yeah, appreciate it. More work to do. Yeah, maybe this is maybe like a bit of a little, I don't want to overstate, like watershed moment, like we've gotten here and now it but it was a lot of that was, well, what's that iceberg image, right? Like it was the stuff happening underwater,
Below the surface, all
below the
like,
surface.
yeah.
And now we gotta just bring it into light and be strategic, and in particular in a moment with, as you all are aware, with resources being constrained. But there is, which maybe doesn't always happen, but we shouldn't take for granted, like an alignment, I think, between philosophically, um, and now increasingly strategically. So.
Yeah, that does feel like big progress. Yay. Yay us.
Well, everyone, please go to your React and you can use it to submit applause or any other emoji you want to send cycling through our digital atmosphere. Um, Anna, thank you so much. Wes, thank you so much. We really appreciated these presentations. I think it's been both really informative and inspiring and exciting stuff to hear. Um, and we're now at the point in our agenda for these 2 days where I think we start to look at all that we've accomplished and reflect and think about some of the next things we want to do here. Um, I think I will pass it back over to Brian as I don't actually know what to sort of say now. And I think, I mean, I don't, I suppose our guests, you're welcome to stay. It's been really nice having Wes here for most of the day. And folks may have more questions or thoughts. And I feel like this alignment energy is really great. So, um, I'm going to send my French fries back out and drop the mic and hand it over to someone else. Brian?
Brian is off camera, so I'm not sure if
Uh-oh.
he's actually
Uh-oh.
available.
All right, should we take five and let everyone stand up? Because I've been hunched over for a little while, and then maybe reconvene at 2:40 to then kind of continue with our sort of wrap up and reflection. Yes, I see some thumbs is up. So
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Cord. I had to step out. Somebody was at my door.
okay, well,
5 minutes.
let's all step out for 5 minutes.
5 minutes, folks. Thanks.
Um, so I was actually just chatting with Cord and I was like, okay, I have an idea. Which is not gonna, I mean, the people will be used to these kinds of activities. And we kind of, maybe we did a little bit of this yesterday, but I would just love folks to um go around and if you can name one thing that feels like a next step or action. Now, you could name two, but if you name two, I need it to be, I would like one to be more of an like YDO thing. And if you have a second, it needs to be a personal thing I am going to do. So you're limited to two. Now you're all getting this assignment, so you need to think. And if somebody says the thing that you thought was really important, then just say, hey, what that person said. And this way, I think this is, as I was thinking about this, is we've talked about things that are in our plan over the last couple of days. So these things we will use, we're recording the meeting, we will track the things that folks say and use it to refine our existing priorities in our plan to help us also identify things that, while they may be there, that are for the longer term, because I'm not trying to expand the plan. I just want us to continue to focus our action. And there are things that I think I've heard over the few days that again are in the plan but feel like have elevated priority. And maybe we'll find some like agreement on things. And again, some were here today and some were here yesterday, and you can name a thing. If you name two, it's got to be a specific commitment you're willing to make yourself. So I'm going to say I heard lots of talk about communication. But I think some kind of elevator pitch feels like and I mean, it's connected to the conversation about templates and that piece. But I'm just going to name elevator pitch. I think it'll be helpful for recruitment, et cetera, et cetera. So I think as an agency or as a collective, that's one thing that I think we need to elevate. There are probably tools that exist, so we don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. And then personally, I will commit. I did get some introductions to people by one of our council members who is terming off. And I started some conversations, but I need to pick up the conversations that Jeff Parker made in terms of introductions for some potential council members down in Eugene. So that's my commitment to take action on. Who would like to go next? I won't call on you because y'all might want to think about it for a few seconds. Tanasia's going to hop off. Tanasia, thanks for everything.
Brian, I can go because mine's kind
Oh,
of connected. So I hear that we need to spend some time really diving deeper into the community engagement plan, which I think is expanded to community and youth, or both, however we want to define that work. And so my commitment is to continue to follow up on the lead, similar to you, of who might be interested in um, joining in part of the conversation with youth committee and moving that forward. So that'll be kind of next steps for me.
I'll go. These are really both for me because I recognize that now that I have my feet stable a little bit more, there's more work that I can do individually. So number one, I'm going to figure out what committees I'm on because I'm also not sure, Jeff. And two, I'm going to reread the full strategic plan and get a sense. I don't know what pieces I might want to know more about until I kind of regroup after this meeting. So.
I'll go next. I really coming away with an increased appreciation of the need to review the community investment grants and their breadth, focus, what kind of outcomes we really want to maybe focus more around in that arena, especially in conjunction with the overlap of the priority areas identified by OEM. So that's the kind of the general strategic plan one. And then personally, since I'm terming off, I would be happy to comment, review, edit any kind of policy brief templates or anything like that that, gets drafted just on my own time as a volunteer beyond my term.
I'm gonna echo what Brian said. Uh, I would, I really, really, really want to be able to describe what we do and um, the good work that we do in an easy way that's easy for everyone to understand. And then on the personal side, I am going to bring someone. I need to bring someone.
Parsa, I see your hand up, so you feel free to jump in.
Thanks, Brian. In reflecting on the retreat, the training on youth voice and engagement just continues to stick with me. And as I serve on the strategy committee, thinking about ways we can integrate best practices, better support, continue to remove barriers for folks serving on our youth committee and serving as council members. So I think, that's something I want to continue to strategize in collaboration with the youth committee. So maybe there's some sort of cross-committee work there between strategy and the youth committee. So, and that's what I'll also commit to in my personal capacity as well. So thank you.
Hey there, everyone. I'll jump in. Nate Latanzio. Honestly, I don't really know how to separate next step commitment piece. I was just gonna say, I mean, in terms of like focus areas we're going forward, it's just all the conversations that we were talking about, like in any which way in which I'm able to do so, like just continuing to help support foster those conversations. I have if we want to do more, like I'd be happy to come back in and facilitate more guided discussions, so dive a little deeper into the ladder of youth voice, dive into other aspects of youth engagement that we didn't get into. Like, more than happy to do any of those pieces. And if there's opportunities that folks have within the context of YDO or beyond, like, hit me up. I'm down to do it.
Thanks, Nate. Who wants to go next?
I'm gonna hop in. I wasn't here yesterday, and so I miss you all from that particular piece. And I have a really concrete next step that has nothing to do with strategic planning. I want to get the detention guidelines tied up with a bow on top of it so that I can then have another next step. But my moment in time is really getting that, and then jumping in where I need to go, and be a bridge where I can be a bridge.
Hey, thanks, Molly. This is Jeff Parker for the record. I'll go next. Couple commitments here for me. I learned a lot today, and so I want to learn more about the SOCAC and the ADPC stuff that I feel like I just scratched the surface. I mean, it was in not that the presentations were in depth, but like I certainly have more to learn. So that's really exciting. Molly, I'm with you. I'm gonna read that whole thing because I know Anya's gonna come hunt me down if I don't. And I also just want to say I so respect the work that the Juvenile Justice Committee does, and I am 100% confident it's awesome, and I'm reading it more for my own edification than for any other purpose than that. And then lastly, two things. Brian, I'm actually in a social function with one of those candidates tonight. I will nudge him again. And then, and as we have some council members terming off, I would say never ever let people escape. Let's create something like a Friends and Advisors or something that's not statutorily, have term limits to it, where if there's any cachet and from who we are, let's make sure that that lives on a letterhead or a website or something somewhere so we can gain from it.
Jeff, does that mean that you are volunteering for the unlimited term position?
I mean, when you work in this sector, you're a perennial optimist, otherwise you would crumble. And the other is like you're a glutton for punishment. So of course, we're we're like do-gooders. We're trying to make the world a better place. The work doesn't end.
Who wants to jump in next?
Well, if nobody, I don't want to cut anybody. So if there's nobody else in line, I'll say a couple of words. Well, first, I really enjoyed yesterday and today. And yesterday was awesome to see you all in person. So, sorry, Molly, we really missed you. Nate, you did an awesome job with that PowerPoint. I'm so in love with the format you used, those frogs and animals and all these things. I think it's the coolest thing I've seen, honestly, like on the PowerPoint thing. And the conversations were great. But today, to me, and I know I'm biased to Caroline and I've heard her speak, but I was so grateful that she found it in herself being sick and still presenting so she could share with you. I still want to go back to what she said in the end, or maybe not in the end, but I did it, that we have to keep it in mind if we have involvement of council members, younger council members, anybody, has to be some kind of tangible. I did it at the end. And I'm also curious about, I love, Jeff, what you said about reshaping where we fit as an agent, as YDO within the overall map of the state, agencies, councils, what our role is, because I understand that we were kind of put with education, but that was by default. That was not by intent by any means. So Just be fair about honest about it. That was never an intent to be an education agency. There's nowhere else they could fit us. So maybe we could find a place, better place to be in. So that's, and my personal commitment is this, Jeff. I'm sending you the current draft of the guidelines as it is, with an expectation that it will probably change at the Juvenile Justice Committee meeting. So, and you will also get an invite to that committee meeting as well. And I really appreciate your interest and how thoughtful you are in your approach, honestly. You can also say that you like really professionally annoying. I love this terminology. I think I'm one of those myself. So thank you. And I don't I'm not supposed to pick anybody, right? It's just like voluntary sort of thing.
I can go next and piggyback off of Anya's because I found Caroline's presentation fascinating, and my personal commitment is to research more about tribal best practices because I realize that I don't know enough about it and I would like to learn more. Um, and I think just in the office, our next task really as grant managers is to get together and discuss how this informs policy briefs going forward, how this informs the RFA, and just start thinking way ahead and how we can implement some of these things going forward.
Thank you.
Can I echo a little bit with Jared said in regards as a grant manager, the idea of formulating processes and trying to figure things out. It's really neat when we have all our grant managers in these discussions. Well, what about this? What about that? And having these meetings that everyone brings something to the table. They're a little exhausting, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, we come up with something like, okay, we try to take as much and everything, you know, into consideration, right? And it's always a process and a learning process. It's iterative. So I'm looking forward to that around the briefs and just the continued work, and really interested about the whole idea of using video, right? And this idea of a QR code. But I could even, my mind started going even further actually in regards to, since I do a lot of the interactive maps, there's tools within the map tools where you can literally incorporate videos into areas of a map, right? But we'll see what happens. So the ideas are percolating right now.
I'll echo all of that. And that for the youth-led grant making, it feels like there might be some steps that we can take that we can label pilot or experimental, that maybe we don't have to have it perfect, but we can get something done and move it forward so that youth feel engaged and that organizations feel supported and that we're able to like have some successes that we can then learn from and be able to like um, engage folks and get things rolling.
This is Kim. I am checking in with you, Sally, on the youth led grant making process. Are we going to get some clarification at the next quarterly meeting on December 11th, since it seemed pretty apparent there were multiple interpretations of what that was supposed to look like or be like? I think it would
We'll
just
get that on the agenda. We'll add it. Make
Awesome.
sure that there's an update and some clarity and folks know what to expect.
Thank you.
I can go next. I think for me, I really love the alignment and the collaboration we have with System of Care, ADPC, and our other partners. It was really interesting to just kind of see how our work just collaborates together. I'm also kind of looking forward to seeing how we can possibly use this to, because there are some issues that we had discussed in our group about like data collection and how we can fix that. I'm kind of looking forward to how we can kind of support ourselves in that way. and also help to push like legislation that will just be helpful to our youth. And I think the next step for me is I think it's the same as Molly. I'm looking forward to supporting to wrap the detention guidelines in a bow and moving on to next steps.
This is Melissa. I'm trying to think more broadly than things I know that I want to contribute to or do. Because top of mind is write a bunch of thank you cards to all of the folks who have joined us, all of our partners who have joined us and made this retreat possible. So I'll be doing some old-fashioned thank you cards. Um, and also taking a look at all of our current committee structures and also looking at I was thinking yesterday about when we went around the table and said our names and how long we've been with the division or the council. Like I have at a glance, I actually know better how long folks have been on the council than how long they've been on the staff because I have my handy spreadsheet. So just keeping in mind that the council is in constant, rollover status, it just makes a really interesting way to keep working with folks who are new or who have been here a very long time. And Brian and I talk about an orientation for new council members and what that can look like and how long it takes for new council members to kind of feel confident in doing the work that we do. And at the same time, taking full advantage of the folks on the council who have been here a longer time, taking full advantage of their experience and experience on the council. Those are sorry, that's not really me saying anything that I'm going to do. Those are just my thoughts coming out of the retreat, and how I can help do that and share that information with the rest of the council and the rest of the division. And I'm looking to see if anyone else.
I'm taking some notes on this. I think we've from Molly Burns or Sam or Chief Copeland. I'm not sure if they're still able to chime in. Lawrence, I don't think we've heard from you either. Got a few folks.
I would just echo what Joy said. The alignment with other systems that's doing the work that we're doing, or in collaboration with those systems. I agree with her. I think we can learn a lot on some of the things that they do because they've, have had some success in those areas, whether it's legislative, whether it's data collection, whether it's, reaching out to other youth organizations, youth serving organizations. So for me, I echo what Joy. I echo Joy's sentiments about just really aligning ourselves with other um, organizations and agencies that's doing the same work. I say that because, the more resources that are available for youth, the better outcomes they may experience. And we can do a lot, but we can do more when we have additional resources working together for the same cause.
This is Andrew. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. Hey, I just go back. I was in and out today, did a bunch of different stuff, but I go back to yesterday and the great conversations we had when you broke apart into groups and really talking about when we're reaching out to our youth, being transparent and honest and really just making sure that we communicate super well and then giving feedback at the end of the process as to how it went. So just for me, that would be a main takeaway for me. And then also looking at the grants. And then, I thought it was really cool. Like, hey, maybe adding, and it may not be me that does this, but as a reminder, like adding more points for the youth as they're evaluating.
Thank you. Who got Molly Burton? Chief? No, you're good. Is there Sam? You?
Yes. Okay. So, um, kind of just as you were talking, kind of like you're alluding to, like looking at everything and seeing if there's duplication of efforts. I think that's the word or the term, like that. It kind of hit me like there's so many different initiatives, so many different task forces, groups. Like, is there a duplication? And then so forth. And in all reality, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, if I was a parent in crisis or need, I just want to know, like, are all these efforts making a difference? That's the thing. Is it simplifying things? Like, is there like, is there someone I can call? Like, who's the one person I go to? Because like with the SUDS, yeah, like substance use disorder, like how she's talking about, like I get calls, I get emails from people, and yeah, and then so forth. Right? I'm sure Molly gets a lot too. And in fact, sometimes I send parents over to their juvenile department. I mean that's reality. Um, yeah, I'm just saying, yeah, that's where that's one of the things. Like, ooh, and then for me, it's like when I get invited to participate in some, I'll try to participate more and try to like say, hey, don't forget this group, don't forget that group, that kind of stuff too. So, yeah, I just hope we can reduce the duplication of efforts and streamline things. Yeah, that's just me.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everybody. I know did we say we'd get you out of here by 3? I think we did. It's about 6 after. Cord, do you still need to go? I think you
I haven't gone, and I don't think Molly Burns went either.
Oh, Molly Burns. Okay, I'm looking.
Okay.
Molly Cord. Okay, go.
Sorry, I was on a call. I think just really incredible ideas and engagement, and I think where a lot of my thoughts are going, in terms of what we heard around the data is I'm thinking about shared metrics. I heard a lot about kind of mapping systems and aligning systems, but so I think my concrete next step is, unfortunately, Bill Hansel wasn't able to be here today. And so really kind of catching him up and just around some of this data work.
Um, the thing that this has been such a rich couple of days, and I was thinking about how I didn't get to really hear 4 of the 6 breakout conversations because I was a note taker in one and facilitator in another. So I kind of want to hear after this. I mean, this is a little bit of a to do is like get some download from my colleagues on the what they're thinking about doing, and I'm excited about the development of the impact briefs. I think that will wind up having a relationship with the data work, as well as youth-led grant making, which I, even though I was a note taker there, I think I'm excited to see how that work unfolds. Thing I will do is schedule the next strategy committee meeting. Daniela, I seem to recall you said you'd be on that committee when you joined us, so that's check that one on your list. We would love to have you, and
Done.
everyone who was there, and everyone who wasn't there, we'd love to have you as well. I think it'll probably be in January following the next council meeting. I think what we'll do is bring back an update to full council about the work we did here these couple of days. Particularly for folks who've not been able to join or haven't gotten this to see all of this. I think we've got a lot to sort of process. There's a lot of notes. I've got a lot of notes. Um, and then I think for the strategy committee, it's I mean, I think the thing that I'm really excited about is how everything we did over these couple of days kind of connects back to the strategic plan. And I'm thinking about how do we now take some of those projects that we've started to really, I think, build some excitement or momentum around and really like work the plan and get these things moving. Um, and so bringing that back to the strategy committee, talking about that, talking about some of the things we haven't gotten to really dig into yet. So I'm kind of looking forward to this. This really gets me excited again about the plan in a way. So I'm looking forward to digging back into it. Brian, back to you.
Well, I just gratitude. Thank you all. Just take a deep breath. You got not quite a couple hours to end your Thursday. I'm sure y'all have things that you got to get to, things you put on hold. Just, yeah, thanks for taking the time. Melissa's putting something up. It's a thank you card. We need a frog on it, I think. If somebody can find the frog emoji, that maybe That's the assignment. I know there's an animal emoji, so you will get, there it is, Sally on it. So I just deep appreciation, uh, kudos and cheers to those of us, to all of us for being annoying. I I think I think some folks at ODE think of me as annoying. That's
It's a
okay.
compliment,
Yeah,
Brian.
I'm okay. I'm
Compliment.
okay.
It's
And if
about
I need
advocacy, right? It's about
advocacy for
And
advocacy.
me
it,
does
yeah.
needs to be
Yes.
with the permission of a certain person who appointed me. But education, annoyingly educated or annoying education. Nonetheless, let's advocate, let's annoy, let's
And
do it
let's do it relentlessly.
Yes.
relentlessly.
Relentlessly. Well said.
Yeah. So I'll just leave us on that note. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in December, if not sooner, at a committee meeting or at the quarterly meeting. It's online. Melissa, is there anything else? Sorry, I know you're all dates, times. We're online for December Thursday.
December 11th. I mean, we'll be at the PSB and you're welcome to join us, but but it will be hybrid. It's not super critical that you travel to the PSB in December. But
Got it.
some of us will be there.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Rest of your
Thank
afternoon.
you.